All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to the regular meeting of the Reno City Planning Commission. Today's date is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. We'll start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Belto, will you lead the way, please, sir? All right, moving on to item number 2, roll call. Michelle, please.
Oh, wait, hang on just a second. I'm not ready. Okay. Harris Armstrong,
Here.
Manny Becerra,
Here.
Arthur Munoz,
Here.
Carrie Romeyer,
Here.
Alex Felto,
Here.
Sylvia Villanueva,
Here.
J.D. Draculich.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Moving to item number 3, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. For those in the room, if you are waiting to speak on a specific item, we will have that opportunity to do so. Is anybody here wishing to speak in general public comment,
Wait,
Michelle?
can I do this?
You
real
may,
quick?
sorry.
Okay. So members of the public may call into the meeting to provide public comment by using the Zoom link provided on the agenda, specifically https://links.reno.gov/planning02-07. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did not receive any correspondence, no request to speak forms, and no voicemails.
Thank you. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on general public comment at this time? Seeing none, we will close public comment. Item number 3, move on to item number 4, approval of minutes. Item 4.1, the Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of December 20th.
Commissioner Villanueva, motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, did I hear you?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Minutes approved. Moving on to item 4.2, Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of January 3rd. Notably, I was not at this meeting, so I will abstain.
Commissioner Becerra, motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion.
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Commissioner Belto will also abstain because I was not at the meeting.
okay, great. Go ahead, say it
Commissioner
again.
Belto will also abstain because I was not at the meeting.
Okay. Minutes approved, 5-0. All right, closing item number 4, moving to item number 5, public hearings. Any person who has chosen to provide his or her public comment when a public hearing is heard will need to so indicate on the request to speak form provided to the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide your comment when item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of this meeting. We'll start it off with item 5.1, which is case number LDC 24-00029 Reno Axe. Looks like we'll get a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening, everybody. This is good. Okay, right on. All right, my name is Alex. The lovely gentleman to my right is Phil. Today we're representing Reno Axe. We'll be talking about existing business operations and addressing any concerns, as well as wrapping this up with some Q&A. Are we controlling the slides? You do. Oh, I got you. Got it.
We are controlling this, or you can control the slides from the podium with the keyboard or the mouse. It's up on the screen for you.
Oh, there it is. Okay. There you go. All right. right, so first, for those of you who don't know us or what we do, Reno Axe and Social provides axe throwing entertainment on our first level. There are 2 levels to this business, as well as a downstairs bar which features various games. Those games are pool, air hockey, darts, that sort of thing. The 2 bars within Reno Axe currently operate until 1 a.m. on Thursday through Saturday, and until 11 p.m. on all other days. And on average year, we serve about 75,000 customers and employ 25 employees. We pride ourselves to be the best and most secure bar in downtown Reno, thanks to our quality of our management team and our meticulously trained staff. And in fact, every single one of our security officers has worked for at least 2 years in a previous high-volume bar. We have passed 100% of police stings and random checks by the city, and that includes immediate knowledge of current occupancy, capacity, clean fire exits, and valid alcohol awareness cards. Currently, we are known for being a pre-party bar. What that means is that folks usually come to us as their first stop throughout the evening and then venture out into the night around 10 or 11 o'clock. Our intention with this permit request is to remain busy for only an extra couple of hours. We are not trying to compete with nightclubs in the neighborhood. And in fact, I want to underline that one. We don't want to be a nightclub in any way. We just want a space for our customers to dance and sing like karaoke while still maintaining our fun and friendly culture. The pictures on the right there showcase the downstairs bar, which will have all of this impacted by, because the DJ and karaoke is going down there. So we're going to address some concerns that were presented to us, but before I do that, I just wanted to state that we genuinely care about not only the people in downtown, but the surrounding area. We have staff and family that live, work, and play downtown, so it's incredibly important to us that we hear your feedback. And in fact, the next few slides are going to be addressing that feedback. And in fact, this feedback that we received made us wonder if this was the opinion of the majority. So we put out a poll to see if folks wanted to have us operate later. And in fact, the overwhelming majority of the 220 members surveyed was in positive. 84% wants us to operate later and have some live entertainment values. So let's talk about those hours of operation. The feedback that we received is that operating until 10 a.m. is way too long. And I totally agree with that. We don't want to operate until 10 a.m. So we're going to tailor that back to only operate a couple hours longer until 3 a.m. on only Friday and Saturday. All other days of the week will be at closing at 11 o'clock. Noise level. Again, we received feedback that their concern was about music being too loud. The good news is that no one's going to hear that music. For the past 2 years, we've been operating the downstairs speakers at or above what they really should be, but we've received no noise complaints. And when we did our own independent sound study, we found that the outside volume is at the same level as the street. In fact, I can't even hear the music if I put my head next to the door. Again, all of this entertainment is going in the basement. And then the type of music. In our last NAB meeting, a member asked what type of music we'd be playing. We're not going to change what we're doing already. It's working. We want to stick with that upbeat house, rap, top hit, reggae kind of stuff. We're not looking to have any aggressive type of music. The next concern is drunk people and, again, noise level. We already discussed our hours of operations, and between us, we tried to understand why people might be outside downtown area just being noisy. And we came up with 4 reasons. They're going from one bar to another, they're walking back to their apartment, or they're deliberately being loud without a purpose. Now, I can tell you in the 4 years that I've been at Reno Axe, it's extremely rare for me to see people that are loud without a purpose. And then lastly, they're getting a ride or they're getting some food. At Reno Axe, we want to help with all 4 of these. We want to operate later and thereby reduce traffic outside, because those same people that would normally be out carousing are going to stay with, oops, I'm sorry. My bad. Instead of being out and about downtown, they're going to be staying with us until about 3 o'clock. And I don't know how many of you stay out until 3 a.m. downtown, but that's usually when most people go home anyway. Increased capacity. Now, the feedback was given to us that the increased capacity to Reno Axe will be an issue. Well, the good news, we're not requesting a capacity increase, nor are we expecting more people as a result. Again, the goal of this permit is only to operate for an extra couple hours and provide some extra services to our customers per their feedback. Next concern is cameras and recording. We've heard those concerns. We have an existing camera system in place that is infrared and records activity for 7 days at a time. We can recall all of that information. Next concern is egress and fire safety. For safety purposes, it was asked for us to have an egress and fire safety protocol. Totally agree with that. In fact, we've written one up that will be reviewed by the appropriate stakeholders within the city that encompasses emergency exits, paths, evacuation plan, and more. Age limits, the feedback that we received is that live entertainment should be restricted to 21 and over. I totally agree with that. All live entertainment will be 21 plus only, and in fact, in current operations, we don't allow anybody under 21 into the business after 10 p.m. And I would go further to say that my staff is extremely trained on how to catch fake IDs and unruly patrons. As a result of that, we have a plethora of fake IDs that we have taken off the streets. Security planning. We totally agree and comply to provide a security plan that is subject to the satisfaction of zoning, code enforcement, and Reno Police. That plan addresses cameras, operations, management, and that includes conflict mitigation protocol and several security staff measures. Moving on, keeping with security. We agree to have one security officer per every 50 patrons during the hours of live entertainment. That's a big deal for us. It is a payroll hit, but we are willing to bend and meet that need. Queuing plan. Again, we agree to provide a queuing plan that is in the satisfaction of city planning. And based on the 4 years of experience, we know that we only hit capacity on crawl nights. We all know what those big bar crawls are. It's the only time that we hit capacity. We already have queuing protocol in place, and we'll continue to do this. Sidewalk and curbs. We agree that the sidewalk and curbs should be maintained in a good and safe condition. We will also monitor for trash and other nuisances caused by our patrons to ensure that the abutting sidewalk remains safe and clean. So in conclusion, Reno Axe and Social is, in my humble opinion, one of the best bars in downtown Reno. We house one of the best security teams in downtown Reno, and this fact is evidenced by a perfect sting and city compliance record. Our customers routinely express their gratitude to my team, stating that they feel safe and that they're able to have a good time without fear of confrontation or disorderly conduct. And again, in the 4 years that I've been doing this, we've had exactly 3 fights, 3 in 4 years. Operating for an additional 2 hours on weekend nights, no changes to current business on the weekdays, is a benefit to the surrounding area. Like we talked about earlier, we firmly believe that we can keep a lot of these unruly patrons off the street for longer. And like I said, around 3 a.m. is when people typically go home anyway. We pride ourselves on always protecting and improving our neighborhood. We operate multiple businesses within downtown Reno, and we want this area to be as clean and safe as possible. We're trying to add entertainment to the downtown area, and we've been doing entertainment for almost a decade. Downtown is close to our heart, and we care for our neighbors. In close proximity to us, there are a large amount of bars that currently operate at what we are currently doing or later. Those bars are all there. I'm not going to mention them out right now, but what I'm trying to state is that we're trying to bring more entertainment to the downtown area, and we firmly believe and are confident that we can do that safely. Do you have anything? Thank you.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it. Now we'll take you guys take a seat. We'll might ask you some questions later. Presentation from the city staff. Hello, Carter.
Good evening, Commissioners. Carter Williams, Assistant Planner for the record. Before you tonight is a conditional use permit submitted by Reno Axe, an existing bar and indoor recreation facility located in downtown Reno. The property is located on the northwest corner of North Sierra Street and West 1st Street. And the specific request is to hold live entertainment events between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. on specific days only within the basement. The property is located within the mixed-use downtown Riverwalk district, and I think it's important to note that the scope of this request is on the live entertainment activity after 11 p.m. Currently in the Riverwalk district, bars are allowed by right, as well as 24 hours for most uses. The live entertainment is also allowed up to 11 p.m. And this business currently has all the licensing required, including cabaret licenses, to operate live entertainment till 11 p.m. The property is located within the downtown mixed-use master plan land use designation, and the application generally supports policies in the master plan relating to the support of existing businesses, support of tourism and entertainment in the downtown core. The conditions proposed with this application or by staff support policies related to public safety, and generally this is an activity generating use along an urban corridor, specifically Virginia Street. The hours of operation listed on the screen are the limits that are being proposed by staff. So Sunday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. are the existing allowed operations under the current code in this area for live entertainment. So the request is specifically asking for an increase up to 3 a.m. for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I think they noted that they actually are only operating Friday and Saturday to 3 a.m. To give some area context, this is the intersection of West First Street and North Sierra Street. This area is generally characterized by some of the features of mixed-use development that we really want to see for this area, with activity-generating uses, bars, restaurants, retail establishments located on the ground floor, and other uses like residential, office, and garage parking located above in a vertical mixed-use fashion. On the screen also is the primary entrance for the existing Reno Axe facility. Generally, within mixed-use areas, we can expect many different uses in close proximity, specifically in downtown. So when staff is reviewing compatibility in areas like this, we're really looking for conditions that are going to mitigate some of those complex adjacency issues that we might find. In order to address many of the concerns made by the public, we've specifically focused on noise and public safety. From a noise perspective, there are conditions recommending, there's a recommended condition restricting the exterior noise levels produced from the facility to 65 decibels. This is comparative to a conversation between two people. And this is also, when staff does these, when we do inspections of this, we do take into account the ambient noise levels of the street. Live entertainment activity after 11 p.m. shall also be confined to the basement by condition. There is a number of barriers between the front primary entrance of the business on Sierra Street to the basement, which staff expects will reduce noise impacts from that area. Outdoor speakers are to be restricted in use after 10 p.m. And exterior doors, particularly emergency exits directly leading to the basement, are to be closed after 9 p.m. and only used in the event of emergency. And this is intended to reduce intermittent noise impacts when doors are open and release sound. We're looking to, staff is conscious of those impacts as well. If any of the conditions, if all the conditions are implemented appropriately and there still are noise compliance issues, staff is recommending a condition that would allow for the city to go back and work with the applicants to implement specific noise mitigation efforts to curb those additional impacts that weren't considered at this time. From a public safety perspective, a security plan must be approved by the Code Enforcement Department and the Police Department. Included in that security plan, there is a requirement for a minimum number of security personnel, which the applicant referenced at a rate of 1 security officer per 50 patrons. There are some additional video surveillance requirements, both a review of their existing indoor and exterior or interior and exterior camera plan, as well as some retention requirements for just retention of video requirements. In addition to that, we are also requiring an evacuation plan, as this is a high-density use inside of a basement. We have a special attention to the capacity for patrons to leave quickly in the event of an emergency. Queues shall be orderly and maintained through stanchions along the sidewalk, according to that image there, and they must maintain adequate pedestrian access on the sidewalk at all times. On the screen are the findings for a conditional use permit. With the recommended conditions, staff was able to meet all the findings. And on the screen is the recommended motion. I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Carter. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now shift into disclosures from the commissioners. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, please start off.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I've been to the property.
Okay. Commissioner Velto, please.
Commissioner Valto, been to the property multiple times.
Commissioner Becerra visited the site, reviewed public feedback, emails, and so forth.
Commissioner Armstrong, I've also been to the site, I've patronized the site, and I've read and received emails.
Commissioner Munoz, read and received emails.
Commissioner Villanueva, read and received emails. I have also visited the site in the past, I don't know how long ago, but patronized the site, so.
Read and received, or Commissioner Dracklich, read and received emails and familiar with the site. All right, with that said, we will go into public comment. We'll go and start off with the people with the request to speak forms. First up is Morton Hom, wishing to make a statement in opposition. And after Morton will be Ann Cascarano.
Thank you, members.
Press a little button if you don't mind, sir. Perfect.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the job you're doing for the city of Reno. I do oppose this. Number one, what Reno Axe presented tonight is not, in fact, what LDC 24-0029 is requesting. It's requesting operation from 11 p.m. to 10 a.m. any day of the week. So I think it's important when we look at what you're being asked to approve is not what they're asking, what they're telling you they're requesting for. So I think on that reason alone, we should not approve this action until that gets resolved. Furthermore, they talk about a lot of mitigation plans, such as ejection, but we don't know what that plan is. And they talk about the job to monitor outside the premises. So when they are ejected, they're supposed to monitor for noise outside. But on a public sidewalk, I don't think they have any authority whatsoever to really do anything other than be a sidewalk monitor. So there's no detail, again, working with the police department on what exactly they're required to do. Do I think they're going to call the police department if they have an issue, be in a bar? I sort of doubt it. But there's nothing detailed that you know as a planning commission or we know as residents living across the street. We've lived a nightmare for the last 8 years with the Sticks Bar. And everybody throws up their hands that, well, it's a mixed zone residential area. If you try to call in a disturbing of the police to 911, you get scolded. You're not allowed to call us. You have to call the non-emergency number. You call the non-emergency number, and that's if time allows, they will return your call. And typically it's 45 minutes to an hour before you get a call back. In the meantime, whatever disturbance is going on, whether they're just drunk, happy, intoxicated people, or angry, upset, a physical altercation or verbal altercation, this goes on. And the best the police department normally do is if they have a car available, they'll send one to drive by. But typically they don't have the resources to stop and address this issue. So we have lived with that night after night. Thursday night was college night, so that was a loud, noisy night. Friday night, Saturday night, and sometimes Sunday night, depending on what was going on. I know my time's about out. But being simply monitoring what's going on outside doesn't resolve the issue when nobody has the ability to do anything with it. They can't. I don't think they have the legal authority on a public sidewalk to do anything, and the police department doesn't have the resources to respond. So the residents living across the street have to live with this noise disturbance night after night after night, and I've lived with it for the last 8 years. And I really request, I understand it's mixed use, but I bought my property at the Palladio knowing that it was zoned for residential, and I think it's reasonable and prudent that residents have a reasonable expectation to get a night's sleep. It is a safety issue, not just a nuisance.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ann Cascarano wants to make a statement in opposition, and after Ann will be Robert Rapkin.
Okay, button here.
Green is go.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, my name is Ann Cascarano. I live at the Palladio. I pretty much agree with everything that was just said. The Sticks Bar was just ongoing. No one ever did anything about it. Just ongoing crazy noise. And I was thinking the same thing about, yeah, there are good security inside your building, but bouncers bounce people outside, and then everybody else deals with it. So, yeah, please don't let them do this. And if this was going to happen next to your house, would you want that where you live? Where do you live? Do you want this at your house? That's just what I'm asking, because we live there. Where do you live? Thank you.
Thank you. Robert would like to make a statement in opposition, and after Robert will be Marilyn Johnson.
Yes, my name is Robert Rabkin from Palladio. I think that the issue, a lot of the speech, a lot of the presentation focused on what was going inside the bar, but that really is not, does not affect the neighbors and the neighborhood. The issue is who's going to clean up the mess on the outside, on the sidewalk, in the streets. Recently, there were some shootings, I don't know if it was on this block or the next block, but if you extend hours, if you extend drinking long enough, well, you're going to get more and more of that rowdy behavior. And so I think it needs to be, anything that's done to increase could be expected to increase the disruption outside of the bar needs to be mitigated by the bar. And I don't know if they have the legal ability to do that. I don't know who would. It's what Chip said, is that the police department is overstretched. And so this does not seem very responsible to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn would like to make a statement in opposition, and after Marilyn will be Magali Rivera.
I've lived downtown for 23 years, and this all sounds good from what they're trying to do to prevent any problems. However, he showed a number of other bars, and I'm at the Arlington Towers, and what worries me is it sets a precedence for bars to stay open so late. The music is loud. The people come out drunk. I've had to call the police numerous times. I hear fighting going on. I hear women screaming. They walk up the river and everything. And they raised our taxes. I have 4 units there. They raised my taxes saying that we'd have more police coverage downtown. There's nobody down there when all this screaming is going on. If I call the police, they'll come down 2nd Street with maybe 4 cars or something. But working as a nurse, I needed my sleep at night. I had to get up at, 4:30 in the morning to go traveling to my jobs and stuff. And people that are working need to have rest. And I'm concerned about the residents down here. They said they wanted more residents in downtown Reno, and where they're building more and more apartments and condos. But this isn't really working in our favor for residents is when they come out of these bars. And I'm not speaking for this particular one. I don't live close enough to it. But the ones that I do live by, the people drink a lot. They come out very drunk at 3 and 4 in the morning, and all the chaos starts. So I'm really concerned about setting a precedence. If this is approved, what other bars are going to ask for the same privileges? And some are, very close to me. So I hope you take it into consideration for the residences of downtown Reno and what happens late at night and 3 and 4 in the morning. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Magali Rivera wishes to make a statement in opposition, and after him is Paul Irving.
Hi. I'm Magali Rivera. I live at the Montage, and my concern is that this is going to set a precedent. I'm also concerned that the city doesn't really have a plan to mitigate noise. And so when I complain about noise, I'm told that there's not really a level that can be measured, which I've lived in other cities. I don't really understand why there's not a plan for that. So I understand that the bar is going to try to do their level best, but when things do happen, there's really not a protocol that works to address the noise, to address bad behavior, to address any kind of noise level, to address vibrations coming from it. And again, you know, we're welcomed here as we're going to revive downtown. But I think a lot of the people who thought that they would establish themselves here are beginning to doubt that this is the place for them, if it's just going to be a party town 24/7. And we just have a lot of things that are coming down the pike that are going to be creating more outdoor noise. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Paul wishes to make a statement in opposition, and after Paul will be Jennifer Hagan.
Yes, Paul Irving, representing the Palladio next door, 50 North Sierra Street. We're on the southwest corner. I'm going to echo many of the concerns you've heard this evening. We've noticed that the later these bars are open, the more people congregate, drink, and we bear the burden of it. There's no question that the security that the Reno Axe will provide certainly will do them well, but the problem is people coming and going in the later evening hours or early morning hours really just spills over to the neighbors. And we know that we're in a mixed-use area. We certainly embrace that, and we embrace the businesses downtown. But I would ask this commission to have a vision for the future of downtown Reno. Many of our condos now are approaching the $1 million mark, or even higher. We have a lot of high-end condos, not only the Palladio, the Montage, Arlington Towers, Riverwalk, others, and I would just ask the commission to think of the future of downtown Reno. And again, we embrace local business. We really do. That's one reason why we live downtown. But when you're looking at a downtown that has this mixed use of high-end condos, we just ask that you consider that. And certainly, again, I'll reiterate, we embrace the business. We love walking downstairs to the various restaurants, bars, establishments. It's fantastic. That's one of the beauties of living downtown. But we all of us have a vision for downtown Reno and really want to make it succeed and do well. And we bring a certain class to downtown, and we just ask that you consider that. Don't run us out of town by allowing bars to be open all night. Just consider those that live there. I will reiterate what has been said. We have no question that security for Reno Axe will be fantastic. But it's a block away, 2 blocks away. It's the noise spills out, and we bear the burden of it. The fights, the drunken disorderly, and I think what has been discussed before about the Reno PD, unfortunately, they do a phenomenal job, but they just don't have the manpower. And from a priority perspective, when they do get a call for a unruly disturbance or what have you, it's just not a priority. So it takes a while. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all you're doing, and really appreciate you listening to the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer wishes to make a statement in opposition.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I really appreciate it, and I also do appreciate businesses in downtown, as you've already heard others talk about. And I haven't patronized the Axe Bar, but I liked what it added to the downtown feel. I think it's obviously a well-run business. However, I have similar concerns to what's already been expressed as far as this may set a precedent. I think the bigger issue are the systemic issues that you've heard about. So I've lived in downtown now for almost 12 years. When I moved downtown, because I was excited to live downtown, there was a pretty good police presence. They really responded very quickly, and I agree that now they seem to have trouble responding, and I don't think that's their fault. I think they're just probably understaffed, and I think there was also a plan to replace the police presence with some
I forget what they're called. They're the folks that ride around on segways and stuff and meet people on the street. Ambassadors, very nice people, but they can't deal with serious issues like this. Additionally, seems to be no effective way to mitigate sound problems. We want people to come and visit the city as well. No one's talked about the guests that we invite to our city, and for them to come to sleep in a hotel downtown and not be able to sleep because the noise is pretty constant is also, I think, opposed to what we want to have downtown, a place that people love to come and visit. So those, I'm expressing very similar to concerns to what you've already heard here as far as safety, noise mitigation, inadequate police presence to deal with disruptive behavior. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it. Michelle, anybody on Zoom or any voicemails we might have missed?
We did not have anybody register to speak via Zoom. Correspondence was received. There were 2 in favor and 10 opposed. Those were forwarded to the Planning Commission and have been entered as part of the record. No voicemails were received.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment and open it up to the commissioners for questions of staff or the applicant. Commissioner Armstrong, please.
This one's for staff. Actually, I have 3. Sorry. So the first one, there's a good point brought up during public comment. In the staff report, it does have longer hours than what was indicated. Is there an amendment that has already been proposed? Is it part of the conditions, or would we have to make an amendment to cap it at 3 a.m. and not move it into 10 a.m.?
So the original postcard, and there was some discussion about this initially about what should have gone out. The postcard indicates the trigger for the application, in that any operation of live entertainment between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. and 10 a.m. requires this.
Right.
There's there's 2 elements here. One, condition 1 requires that they comply with what was submitted. So they submitted an application to operate till 3 a.m.
Okay.
The conditions were on top of that, and then we were recommending a condition to limit it to 3 a.m. So they will not be able to operate past 3 a.m. With those protections.
Another thing you had mentioned in your presentation, there's a condition for sort of a triggering event around noise complaints. So if whatever's been implemented as a result of our potential approval, if there's more complaints that would trigger further action, is there a number on the amount of complaints? Like, is it discretionary? Like, how does that work? How does it end up coming back to the city to request further conditions?
It would be, administrative discretion in code enforcement when we start looking at, so that there's frequent noise complaints that go above and beyond what we can control with the conditions. We're able to implement sound studies. I can't really say what that number might be, but I think that our staff is more and more concerned about noise complaints regarding live entertainment businesses. So I imagine we'll develop a consistent pattern, we'll be consistent, I think. I think that the other intent is to be consistent across the city and our enforcement of noise complaints too.
Okay. No, I was curious just how that process works, and we've had, I think, similar conditions where it ends up falling on code enforcement. It becomes kind of a code enforcement administrative issue. So I just wanted to make sure I was tracking that. And then my last question is related to sort of the precedent setting. My understanding is that this conditional use permit is available to any bar that operates downtown, and it would have the same set of standards if they wanted to make this ask. So irrespective of a decision that's made today, that conditional use permit is not special to this establishment. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, that's correct. So any bar or any business for that matter, it's not specific to a bar that wants to operate live entertainment past 11 p.m. This process is available to them, and staff and the Planning Commission are able to look at the specific considerations of the area and the surrounding uses. I will also note that the conditions that are represented in the staff report are through some effort by city staff to upgrade our capacity to enforce noise compliance associated with these businesses, and it's probably expected this will be the norm of the conditions moving forward, as well as even the current businesses that may already have entitlement. We may be able to go back and look at their existing plans and bring them so that there's a level playing field across all those businesses that operate live entertainment.
Okay, great. Thank you for that detail. I really appreciate it.
Commissioner Draxler, I'll jump in, just piggyback on your second question, just so I have some clarity too, Carter. So on the noise complaint or code enforcement, I guess what I was hearing from public comment and what we've heard from everybody is it's not so much about the noise coming from the basement, but the noise that comes outside. So if code enforcement, or there's noise complaints and we can't necessarily associate it to one business or another, would that affect someone like the applicant, whether that was their fault or not, or their patrons or not? I guess it just seems convoluted on that intersection where there's, I guess, 3 bars or 2 bars in a restaurant. I'm just curious how that would go, because I'd feel bad if it had nothing to do with their establishment and there was noise on the southwest block.
Yeah, so to poke at specific conditions, the one relating to noise, and when we do inspections and verify, when code enforcement verifies compliance with the sound level restriction, I think it's evident when you take a device that reads sound, bring it next to the building, go away from the building, go to another bit. Like, there's ways that we can target in where this sound source is. On a general note, I think that code enforcement is developing with the police department, a strategy for dealing with noise compliance with live entertainment businesses. The first part is establishing these conditions, and we're actively working to ensure that we are able to comply or implement them across the city.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That clears it up. I guess I just didn't see the issues about being the sound in the basement, but more or less sound pouring out of the bar. But the doors are going to be closed, I think, after 9 or 10. And it sounds like the staff doesn't have any issue with the potential noise coming out of the establishment. Is that somewhat accurate?
With the conditions, we expect that those are mitigated.
Great. With those, if that's followed, okay, great. Thanks. Commissioner Velto, please.
Yes, thank you. Carter, I think my question's for you. When you look at the compatibility of the surrounding areas, like how far away are you looking when you're looking at compatibility?
So, from a sound perspective, which I think is a priority for compatibility in this case, we are looking from, in the immediate area, which is a lot of residential, but our conditions are really the exterior of the building. Is there impacts even beyond that? So from a compatibility perspective, it's less about I think the proximity to other uses. It's more, is any use going to be impacted negatively by this? And like from a sound perspective, like if you put a sound reader on the wall of the building, is it triggering? I guess that answers your question.
Well, I guess I understand the concept of sound, but one of the findings for CUP is compatibility with the surrounding areas. And my reading of that is we're to look at what the surrounding uses are and determine compatibility. And certainly if we were to say, this is the scope of where we look at compatibility, we probably wouldn't look at the, Reno Livestock Event Center or somewhere in downtown Sparks. We'd probably draw a circle and we'd say, this is where we analyze compatibility. Do you have an impression as to what that zone is we look at when we determine compatibility?
I think generally when we're looking at downtown, and this is supported by the master plan and the mix of uses, that there is going to be that we're expecting these kind of interactions to occur. So from a compatibility perspective, I think I would defer to the master plan, and that we expect for this, and we need to respond accordingly with conditions that are going to mitigate those impacts. So that's, I think, where staff is coming from. It's not necessarily a question of, is a bar or nightclub in the same building even incompatible with a residential above. It's, are we able to provide mitigation so that these uses coexist together?
Okay. I think my next questions might be for the applicant. They might be able to answer this a little bit better. If one of y'all could come up to the podium. So it's been a couple years since I've been out at downtown Reno at 3 a.m., so I'm trying to get an understanding of to what other establishments have similar music and whatnot. Do you know when, like, West 2nd closes, the karaoke bar?
Yeah, West 2nd closes advertised 3 a.m., but they regularly go past that.
Okay, so 3 or 4 a.m.
Could
they'll
you just
close.
state your name for the record,
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Thank
My
you.
name's Alex Groden.
Good name. So 3 or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
and they do live karaoke on the first floor. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And they have glass windows
Yes.
all the way down. And then for, say, Eden, do you know what time Eden closes?
Most of my staff will go there on occasion, 3 or 4 a.m.
And One Up,
One Up, do they still exist?
it's been a few years.
They used to go to 3 a.m. with their license.
And then 5 Star.
5 Star regularly later. I've walked by it at 6 and they're still going.
And how about Tonic? Is Tonic still open?
Yeah, Tonic is still open, way beyond 3.
Okay, and all of those locations are within a how many minute walk from Reno Axe?
5 minutes, maybe.
Okay. And I just want to be clear from the questioning earlier, your request is solely to go till 3 a.m. on Friday, Saturday,
Yes, sir.
and then the other nights would be your typical closing time.
Yep, at 11 o'clock.
Okay, and it's only to have the live music downstairs, not upstairs.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Velto, technically Thursday, Friday, Saturday night.
My apologies.
No,
Thursday-
you're good. Just so we're clear.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, we don't want to forget about you in virtual land. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah. Commissioner Villanueva. Oh, she raised her finger first. Ladies first. Commissioner Villanueva, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll start with staff. Okay, so I appreciate the questioning from Commissioner Velto. That was a lot of what I was going to get to. With respect, I do think compatibility is a key factor with what we're looking at here. But before I get to that, I have a couple just questions to help me understand. So with regard to the bars just being open, let's put aside the live entertainment. How late is this bar permitted to be opened with or without, or actually without music?
24 hours.
Okay, so it could be open 24 hours even if we don't have music?
Correct.
Okay. So that kind of helps me understand a little bit about, the people outside. So if we didn't have live music, the folks could still congregate outside. Is that, potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Because, and how late this is for the applicant, if you wouldn't mind approaching. So right now, how late do you guys stay open do you have nights where you don't have music? No. Okay, you have music every night? Okay, and how late? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Actually, that's a moot point. Okay, so back to staff. Sorry for the back and forth, but I'm just trying to understand this. Okay, so with compatibility, the point is to have these entities coexist, right? Because it's a mixed-use space. They knew what they were getting into when they moved to the area as a business, as a small business, and the residents also simultaneously knew what they were getting into when they moved to mixed-use area. When we look at these entities, going back to compatibility, do you think that, Commissioner Belto mentioned that there was these other bars, 5 Star and some of the others he mentioned. Would you say that they all do fall within that spectrum for review of compatibility? Or, sorry, go ahead.
So there's a number of, obviously there's a number of bars downtown they established at different times with different requirements. So,
okay.
We do have to look at each individual case to identify what specific conditions were applied at the time, if any. And there are some of those that they have no restrictions because it's just we didn't regulate it back then. I say back then,
Fair.
20, 30 years ago. So actually it's probably further, but regardless, As new ones come in, we're looking to bring them into conformance. As even new operators, we're re-looking at those original entitlements and seeing if we can apply the same standards to slowly bring each business into conformance with what's, in our view, acceptable in a mixed-use environment.
Okay, that's a really good point, because you point out how we do it it's a case-by-case basis. So for instance, 5 Star, which is a couple blocks down from the residential units that these, a lot of the public commenters, where a lot of the public commenters live, versus in this case where it's right next door. I mean, there's the how we look at that's going to be case by case, and in that case for you, when looking at this application, would you say that that should be taken into consideration, a next door neighbor versus, you know, a bar that's down the street?
So yeah, I mean, I think definitely the closer proximity to residential, the more we should look at those issues that could that from staff's perspective would impact our finding of compatibility.
Okay. And then one more, actually, I'll hold off on this one. I'll let other people chime in. Thank you.
Sure, great. Commissioner Munoz?
Commissioner Munoz, she actually asked, and my question was answered. So I'm just going to discussion when you guys are ready.
That's why I let her go first. Commissioner Becerra, please.
Thank you, sir. I guess for Carter, we've heard a lot of conversation around mixed use and what's allowed and so forth, and I think sometimes it's helpful just to ground ourselves on a vision. Would you mind sharing with us, and feel free to defer to maybe staff as well to chime in, but what is the vision of downtown? When we talk about mixed use, are we can you paint us a picture of, is it nightlife with folks being able to walk and live in downtown? Is there a quiet corridor within downtown?
So from the master plan perspective, and I think I did bring up some from the context photo that I gave for this specific intersection, because I think it is representative of what we want to see downtown, is a lot of land uses on the ground floor that are going to directly interact with the pedestrian environment. They're going to draw people in, while also providing the opportunity for residential office for these other uses that economically support a mixed-use environment, particularly in downtowns. I think generally there was concern over a vision for how to manage those compatibility issues, and I'll say that staff is continually working on those issues, and I think a big step is these conditions like this that give staff the ability to enforce some of those. I don't want to call them incompatibilities, because I don't believe that they need to be. I think that there are ways to provide symbiosis between different land uses, different ways of life, and different uses for our downtown core.
Great, thanks, Carter. I think was it 31C, the entertainment and tourism factor? Is that the one you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And we heard Sticks Bar thrown around a few times. I've personally never gone there or anything, but just for clarity, is it a one-to-one comparison, or is it two separate matters altogether?
They are two separate matters. The Stick Bar was originally approved under a separate entitlement. It was a different business, and it was a while ago. There are conditions that we are able to implement, and just as I said, when we go and code enforcement goes through and reviews these old entitlements, we're able to identify ways that we can make better those operations so they're not as impactful in the future.
Great, thanks. And just one more for you, and then one for the applicant. When the city looks into these kind of CUPs, does it also talk with RPD in this case? Because there was a lot of conversation about safety and late night calls, and gather feedback from RPD to get a sense if they're aligned with this, like if they can support the potential uptick in activity and calls and so forth.
Yeah, so these conditions were crafted with the consultation of the Reno Police Department. And generally, in looking at the CUPs, there's often a requirement for a security plan that has to be approved by the administrator, and that would include the code enforcement department and Reno Police Department. We just explicitly mentioned it in this condition, and I think moving forward we'll do that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carter. May I get one more for the applicant?
You may, Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you, sir. Hey, great presentation, guys. You mentioned that you were a pre-party location, but where do folks go after the Devil's Hour, 3 a.m.? If you're planning to keep them there, does your model change from a pre-party location to more of a just stay and hang out here?
Got it. We see a natural decline in our customer base right around 11 o'clock, and it's usually evidenced by sales anyway. So we're looking to kind of hang on to the smaller group of people that want to remain and hang out. The downstairs bar has a lot of games in it, pool, basketball, that kind of stuff. So it's, we're just looking to capitalize on that and run a little bit longer. Now, to answer the first part of the question, where do people go? Me personally, I'll go to our bar, but they don't usually operate that long. 5 Star is a great place if there's an event going on. And so we're kind of going down First Street, or we're going to the right. So I don't know what direction it is, out of our building and up Sierra.
Okay, great, thank you. And in addition, just commend you for how you run your shop there. I did pop my head in just randomly, and your staff was very welcoming. They showed me around. I didn't even know you guys had a basement, to tell you the truth. And it was a great experience. So if it's anything like that for most folks, then kudos. If things were to move forward, how would you assess if things are working or not, like 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road?
Multiple factors, I would say. Obviously, the first one on our end is just revenues, sales. Number 2, right away, would be the impact to the neighborhood. Believe it or not, we really care, and that's why we reach out to the HOA and a couple of you guys. We want to know. We want to care and want to make sure that neighborhood is safe. We have multiple businesses. And you want to make sure it keeps going well. To answer some of Prue's comments too, like when we do see things outside, we actually do call the police, and they do come because it comes from a business, so it's easier to get probably a faster response. So we do believe also staying late a little bit longer will actually help like the city be safer.
Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Phil Frazier.
Très bien.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Question, Commissioner Villanueva, go ahead.
Thank you. This is actually for the applicant. I try to catch you before you sat down.
We appreciate it.
Get your exercise. Okay, so now that I understand you operate with live entertainment most nights, if not every night, do you more often than not generate a queue outside your business?
So we only have a queue only like about 4 nights a year. But also to maybe like correct one of your statement, we do not have live entertainment right now past 11. We do have music. It's just not a DJ. It's not someone who actually is here producing the music. So the only thing we're asking here is to have someone potentially playing the music or having karaoke. Karaoke request needs live entertainment license.
Okay, and then I noticed in your presentation, as opposed to the staff presentation, you said Friday, Saturday. Because what I'm thinking about proposing is, because we do have to try and coexist in this mixed-use space, and as I indicated earlier, you all knew that it was a mixed use and vice versa, they knew, and so we do have to make it work in a way that makes sense for everyone. So would your business be open to only Friday, Saturday if we did give you that extension to 3 a.m. Instead of Thursday? And the reason I ask is because Friday's still a work day for many people, and in order to really make this work, I think if we take that into consideration, I think that'd be a good compromise. So it seems like, yes, you're nodding. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
No further questions.
Great, no problem. Looks like we might want to shift into discussion. Commissioner Belto, please.
So I'm in support of this as it's proposed by the city staff. I think when we look at the surrounding areas, it would be unfair for us not to permit this type of use. I think West 2nd Karaoke Bar is probably in the eyes of the neighbors, 10 times worse than what is being proposed. We're talking about live music downstairs with the doors shut, as opposed to West Second Karaoke Bar, which is loud music, very thin glass, and that's a 2-minute walk away from Reno Axe. So I think that I think it makes sense. I can make all the findings, and I'll be supporting what staff has proposed.
Commissioner Dracklich, same sentiments. I like it as proposed. I'd hate to hinder a business who could possibly profit and bring, people to their establishment at a time that I think in a district that's still applicable. And I understand the concerns from that, but I like it as proposed. Commissioner Munoz.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. I think what the Axe is asking for is completely reasonable. I don't frequent downtown often, but when I do, and I've been there late at night, you can find a bar 2-minute walk from this place running till 3 a.m. everywhere. So for us to come up here and say, oh, no, you're the only one that's not permitted to do this, there was talk of a precedent being set. The precedent has already been set. And for us to come in and say, okay, well, now we're going to limit you, when you're not even half as asking or what you're asking for is less than what every other bar has down there already. For us to limit you and say, no, we won't allow this is, in my mind, it is not the spirit of what downtown is. Downtown is business-oriented. That area it's always been a bar area for the last 25 years I've been here. It is what it is. And by us allowing music downstairs that is not going to impact what we're allowing, the music is not going to impact the area. It's just going to allow this bar to maybe hold on to its customers a little bit longer and generate more revenue. I think we'd be wrong not to approve this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Becerra, please.
Sure. I echo the sentiments of my commissioners. I'll also be supporting this, but I do want to stress that I empathize with the concerns. But for what it's worth, these guys are pretty dang neighborly. One of the things I always look for is who's running the ship, and it seems like they've been really thoughtful. And again, kudos to you guys. And so I think that if what we've seen tonight in the presentation, their outreach efforts, is any indication of how things are going to go, I think things are going to be not just good for that particular corner, but perhaps the model for how others should move forward with seeking a CUP as well. And Carter, great job as well.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, you want in?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to share the same sentiments with my fellow commissioners. I'll be supporting this project, or the CUP for this project. I wanted to say that from a compatibility standpoint, I think the discussion is quite interesting since this business has been upstanding, if you will, for 4 years. They haven't had code enforcement issues. They've been good neighbors for several years. So to me, they've proven their compatibility in so many ways. And what they're asking is in nowhere near as dramatic as things that are on the same block. So I would like to just wish them good luck. And I thought Carter did an excellent job talking about how the master plan applies in this case for this sort of urban perspective. So I hope and I sense that the conditions that the city went through to design mitigation will satisfy neighborly potential conflicts that don't even exist at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong first, please go ahead.
Could you please turn your mic on?
Sorry, apologies. Commissioner Armstrong, I was going to concur and make a motion, so if you have more discussion, I will hold off.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I agree in part and disagree in part. So generally speaking, I think that it is appropriate to grant the extension, but I disagree with allowing for Thursday. Partly because I think, some of the commenters made a good point about the vision. And, oddly enough, our next item up is regarding affordable housing and multifamily housing, and kind of moving forward with more of that within the city. And so I think we do need to take that into consideration. And as staff mentioned earlier, it is a case-by-case basis. And yes, we do have neighboring businesses such as, and I hate to keep using 5 Star, but that's the only one that I can think of right now, neighboring businesses. But these guys are direct neighbors. And I think if it's not really a huge deal in my mind if they compromise a little, they have music the rest of the week, and we're going to potentially give them this extension. I don't think it's a huge deal if we say, okay, you get only Friday, Saturday, and then let's give a little to the neighbors. And so for the most part, yes, I agree with some of my colleagues, but I would ask that we only approve Friday, Saturday. And I mean, nothing's stopping them from coming back in the future and asking for that extra day once we kind of see how this goes. But I think it's giving too much too quick, and we can, start with Friday, Saturday. So that's kind of my position.
Thank you. Looks like were you going to make a motion, Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, I was ready to make a motion. In the case of LDC 24-00029 Reno Axe, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report as presented.
All right, we have a motion.
Commissioner Valtwell, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go roll call. Michelle, please.
Okay. Draculich,
Yes.
Armstrong,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Munoz,
Yes.
Romeyer,
Yes.
Velto,
Yes.
Villanueva.
No.
All right.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. Good luck with your business.
Could you please read the appeal process into the record?
Oh, yep, you got it. Give me a moment. Appeal process. Any final action, not including recommendations or failure to take action by the Planning Commission, may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal, together with fees, must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to item 5.2, case number TXT24-00001, Title 18 Affordable Housing Initiatives. I'm assuming we're just getting, Ms. Foos. Hello. You tell me.
I'm good.
Hit the green button now, or the blue that's now green.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Angela Foos, Assistant Director with Development Services, here tonight to talk about a text amendment. So it's been a while since the City of Reno has processed a text amendment. This is something we do periodically. This is anything impacting Title 18 goes to the Planning Commission. So this text amendment is specific to housing initiatives. We've talked a lot about some of the changes we're making within the zoning code. That will be before you guys next month, but this one specifically is just on a targeted text amendment dealing with housing. Kind of two things we're looking at is one is addressing some of the affordable housing concerns, and the second really is the supply of housing. So you may ask, well, why are we doing this now? A couple reasons. One is this is not something that's unique to Reno or Nevada. The whole nation really is dealing with a housing crisis. It's a crisis that's been going on for a couple years. It's an issue of supply and cost, and we're seeing it everywhere. So this is not something that just Reno is doing. Jurisdictions across the country are trying to deal with how do we address affordability, again, cost, and how do we address supply. So the second big issue that we're dealing with is Assembly Bill 213. This was something that our legislature passed this last session, and they basically said local jurisdictions by July of 2024, which is in 5 months, You need to come up with some new ordinances that help affordable housing get to market faster, meaning find a way to process affordable housing projects. And you can also add some deviations, meaning make it easier to get those housing projects to market. And again, that was specific for the affordability piece. So again, while housing and supply of housing is something that our city council has prioritized, even more so now because the state legislature has mandated that we do something to address these issues. So just want to make this clear, maybe to the audience, what this is not addressing is something outside of Title 18. So there's been a lot of discussions about evictions and mandating, rent control. That is not something we as a zoning body can control. So that's not what's being discussed today. The other things that we've heard a lot about is accessory dwelling units. Those are things like granny flats and short-term rentals. And so that's the VRBOs and the Airbnbs. So we are addressing those separately, not as part of this initiative. And again, we have a number of different zoning code changes that we'll address in the future, specifically related to all of our zoning code cleanup items, not related to housing. We did want to just highlight that we have done a pretty extensive public outreach process. We reached out to multiple news sources. They did interviews, so we tried to kind of target folks that watch the news. For folks that don't watch the news, we tried to hit more of that social media. City of Reno has a pretty good following, either on Twitter, Facebook, and some of these other social media. So we blasted that out. We also have a pretty good email list of people that are stakeholders are interested in things that Reno does. So we blasted it to all these different groups, and we held 3 different stakeholder meetings. We held those in January. They were all virtual, so you could attend at any time. We recorded them, and we also put them on our website. And I will say, generally speaking, we don't get a ton of input when we do stakeholder meetings. Not many people show up. Of those 3 stakeholder meetings, we had about 145 attendees. That's probably the highest stakeholder input we've had on anything. Compared to the zoning code, we held 9 meetings as opposed to 3 stakeholder meetings. And we had a quarter of the number of attendees in 9 meetings on the zoning code than we have had on the housing stakeholder meetings. Now that tells me that housing is a big deal for this community, right? People are concerned and want to know, what are we doing? So let's go over, there's basically 4 main issues or areas that we're covering. We're going to go over each of those, and then we'll open it up to questions. So the first one is, again, dealing with that AB 213. What are we doing to incentivize affordable housing? We've come up with some new regulations that really just look at what we're doing now and escalate it up higher. So right now, we have what we call some density bonus regulations. We have parking reductions, things you can do if you have affordability, meaning like some kind of subsidized housing. This is truly your low-income housing. So again, what the state legislature did is find a way to get that to market faster. So what we're proposing is if you can meet that 60% AMI, then you would be exempt from having to go through a conditional use permit or a site plan review, that entitlement. Again, that gets them to market faster. Now, we want to add that this does not exempt you from going into a zoning district that does not allow multifamily. You have to be zoned for multifamily, and you can't just throw in something that deviates from code. So if you're like, the code allows me to go 3 stories, I'm going to go 5 stories. No, we don't allow that. You still have to meet the code requirements. But we have things like, you have a conditional use permit that's triggered because you have, let's say, more than 50 units. Our code just has certain areas that if you have a certain number of units, you have to go through an entitlement. So we're saying those are the types of projects that would be exempt, if you're affordable, from having to go through that entitlement. And then second from that is, how can we get them through the process faster? So if we exempt them from that entitlement review, that's going to planning commission or going through any kind of public hearing, what else can we do? At a building permit stage, we are going to help fast track them through the building permit. So we would assign a staff liaison, somebody already within our staff that would basically hold their hand, walk them through, be there to answer any questions immediately. Again, nothing that affects you guys, nothing that really affects the zoning code, just something internally we would do. At a high level, you're thinking, wow, that seems like a lot of staff time. It's not, because we don't get a lot of affordable housing projects. Generally, we get 2 to 3 projects a year. That's nothing. So if we get nothing, what can we do to get something, right? Again, small incentives that can hopefully make a difference. Okay, the other big thing we do is this density bonus. It's already in code. So if you do affordable housing, we allow you to add more units. And there's a cap, it's not unlimited. Right now, we cap you at a 45% max density bonus. So if you're bringing in 10 new units, a 45% density bonus is 4 units. So instead of 10 units, you can do 14. That's the cap now, that 45%. What we said is, are we being kind of narrow-minded in terms of who is this low-income, end user? Right now, we're just saying 60% and less gets these benefits. 60% of that average median income. We looked at state law. State law actually has 2 other categories of what they consider to be low income. So we said, well, we should probably match state law and provide incentives for those same types of low income housing. So we're adding this, I would say 61% to 80% AMI. Again, 80% AMI is what we consider workforce housing. It's not the very low income housing, but again, it's more the workforce. So we're proposing, if you're providing that 80% average median income, you could use that density bonus and get a 45% density bonus. If you're above that and you're in the 80 to 120% of the AMI, we're saying you should still get a density bonus because you're not doing market rate, you're still providing some kind of subsidy. So we're proposing to do a 35% density bonus. We don't typically see those housing projects. I think I can think of one in the entire city of Reno in the last probably 10 years that's provided that 80% workforce housing. So again, not a lot of projects meet this requirement. But if it's encouraging more development to do that type of affordable housing project, great. Now the big difference here is that very bottom category. So the 0 to 60%. Again, right now, you can get a 45% density bonus. We're proposing to have unlimited density bonus. In the past 3 years, because we've already had this density bonus in code, we have had 1 affordable housing project come forward, and they requested 1 additional unit. So if what we're doing now is not working, this hopefully will make a change. It may seem drastic, but again, we've had 1 unit in 3 years benefit from this. So let's do more. Okay, so that is specific to affordability and affordable housing. The other thing we're trying to address is just housing in general. And so specific to market rate, we already have in our code some density bonus allowances for market rate, meaning we don't look at the income, we don't look at what the price is that you're charging. You come in for a building permit and you have units that are 1,000 square feet or less, pretty small. We currently allow you to do this density bonus of up to 45%. We're proposing to increase that. Instead of just capping it at 45% for these smaller units, let's go up to 80%. So again, if you had 10 units and you use that density bonus, now you would have 18 units. Pretty small. Again, we already have this in code that allows for units that are 1,800 square feet in size or smaller. Right now, you can get a 15% density bonus. We're going to increase that to 35%. Not big, but a small change. Of the smaller units, again, between 1,000 square feet and 1,800, if your unit sizes are closer to 1,400 square feet, right now you can do a 30% density bonus, and so we're proposing to go up to a 45% density bonus. So generally speaking, is this used? We have had I think about 7 projects utilize this in the last 3 years, and a total number of additional units is about 60. So in 3 years, we got 60 new housing units on the market in 3 years because of the density bonus. The majority of the projects that use this just need 1 or 2 extra units. You can't go taller than what your height allows, so it's not like you're going to go crazy, but maybe you're limited by zoning only allows you to put in 10 units. You're like, gosh, if I could just do 2 more units, I can make this project pencil. So through that density bonus, It's definitely helped a lot of projects. We wanted to give you just some real-world examples. Here's an older building that was built in the 80s, and initially they came in with 7 units, and they had a caretaker's unit back when it was built. So they came in and they said, hey, I'd like to convert that caretaker's unit that was eventually turned into like a laundry room. So over the years, it's just been kind of redone. Existing building, they said, I'd like to take that additional unit that's not residential today and turn it into another residential unit. So I just want 1 more unit. I'm not expanding the building. The footprint's the same, just taking what's an existing unit that was, again, more of a laundry room and converting it. So through that density bonus, they were able to do that. I love the idea that we can actually do reuse, right? You don't have to build a brand new project. You can take what's already in our infill areas and get maybe 1 or 2 more units. Here's another example. This was Motel 6. This is over off of Stardust, which is by the old bowling alley off 7th and Keystone. So we have an existing motel, and they said, we want to convert it, but we don't want to tear it down and start over. So it had 88 rooms. The zoning, actually it had more than that, I apologize. The zoning allowed it to have 88 units, but it had more rooms than that. And they were basically taking each motel unit, right, your room, and converting it, adding a kitchen, making it a living space. So through that density bonus, they got to add an additional 36 units. Basically just took existing motel rooms and converted them. If we didn't have that density bonus, that's 36 units that would not have been able to turn into residential units. And again, the more housing we can bring, regardless of if it's reuse or a conversion, the better off we are. And then finally, this is a new build, so I thought this might be of interest to you as well. Small site, there's less than half an acre, and they were able to get 16 units. With that density bonus, they were able to add 2 more. So instead of 16, they got 18. All right, the next one is what we're calling by right development. So by right means you come in, you talk to the planners, and they say, oh, you're going to trigger a conditional use permit. So you have to go through that process. By right means you don't have to go through any entitlement. You can go straight to a building permit. Now, we looked at what our code says and what other jurisdictions say. Our code says if you have between 20 and 100 units, you have to go through what we call a minor conditional use permit. So it doesn't go to you guys, but it still is a 30-day additional review process. Anything over 100 units, let's say you have an apartment project with 150 units, that would trigger a conditional use permit and go before Planning Commission. So we looked at other jurisdictions: Fernley, Sparks, Carson City, Henderson, Salem. What are other cities doing? This is, I would say, out of the ordinary for what we see in other local jurisdictions. We are unique in that we require a lot of entitlement review where other jurisdictions do not. It is very typical for other jurisdictions to trigger an entitlement over a certain unit, 100 units, 110 units. Many jurisdictions, if it's zone multifamily, just said you can go as many units as you want without an entitlement, just meet your density. So again, because we are more restrictive on that, and because we're trying to help housing get to market cheaper and faster, this seemed like a very easy one to say, everybody else is doing it this way but us, right? This is not unique to Northern Nevada or Southern Nevada, it's unique to us. We do way more entitlements for residential development than most of the state. So what we are proposing is to say, if you're less than 100 units, you don't have to go through an entitlement process. You can go straight to a building permit. Here's some examples of projects in the past couple years that have triggered some kind of review, right? So these are projects, just to give you an example of like, what are we talking about? So Vesta Apartments, this is one that's being built right now. It's 40 units. They did have to go through that minor conditional use permit. It tacked on another probably 3 months to their whole development timeline. And I will say, too, the challenges that we hear from developers is, hey, time is money. Have you seen interest rates? It's out of control. If these projects had been able to go to market faster, the price that they could build this and the price that then they could rent is drastically different. Another one there at the middle there is the Fairview Apartments. So 14 units, and they ended up triggering a public review process. The one on the right, brand new again, Grand Canyon Apartments, 18 units, pretty small development, but it had to go through that additional review process. All right, and then our final one is what we call the missing middle. This is a term I think a lot of communities are using. It's kind of a buzzword, but it's a thing, right? This is everything from your duplex, your triplex. Really, most of us deal with either apartments or single family, but there's a whole lot of housing product in between, whether it's townhomes, whether it's for rent. There's things that we could be doing to help really increase some of these infill areas and just bring a less expensive housing market or housing product to market. So we looked at what other communities are doing. I think last week, Anchorage, Alaska talked about how they are releasing barriers and allowing duplex, triplex in all single-family zoning districts. So again, if Alaska can do it, why can't Reno? Right now, we allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex. Here's a map, and all the areas in green. So this is a huge swath in the city of Reno where we currently allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex. What we're proposing is just to increase it, allow them in 2 additional single-family zoning districts, which is everything in that orange. And well, when we say allow, you would still have to go through a conditional use permit. Again, we want the neighbors to have some input on that. These are single-family zoning districts. And just generally speaking, we don't get a ton of this housing product. In the last 3 years, we've had 26 building permits come in for a duplex, 26 in 3 years. Same with triplex and fourplex. We just don't see a lot of these. So the more we can do to help bring in, again, a less expensive housing product, maybe you don't want to buy a single family home or you can't afford it. Here's some other housing products that I think the community would like to see. And definitely if you're trying to, pay rent or pay a mortgage, definitely gives you more flexibility. So those are, again, the kind of the 4 main categories. I did have one change to the ordinance, and this is kind of a nothing thing. We have a calculation of how do we calculate density bonus, and so I just wanted to change how we calculate it, and we provided an example in our zoning code. We had some questions of like, is that really the way we should be doing it? So we went back and we figured out a better method to calculate it. It's not really a thing to even talk about, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we figured out how to do the math correctly. So we made the change and we're proposing that revision. Not a big deal, but just wanted to highlight that we are proposing that change just in how we calculate density bonus. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I do know we have at least one person in the audience wanting to speak on this, so I will pass it over to Commissioner Draculich.
Thank you, Ms. Foose. I appreciate it. I don't believe any more presentations, so we will kick it to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, please.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I reviewed the staff report and the letters that were received.
Commissioner Villanueva, please.
I don't know what it is with us tonight. Commissioner Villanueva, I reviewed, I think it was one of the school districts sent us a letter. I reviewed that. I attended the meeting, one of the stakeholder meetings, and that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Munoz, I reviewed the letter we received.
Commissioner Armstrong, I reviewed the staff report and also reviewed the letters. Thank you.
Commissioner Becerra reviewed the letters, Washington County School District letter, attended a city council meeting on a similar presentation. Yes.
Commissioner Valto, same disclosures.
Commissioner Draculich, I reviewed the letter, read some emails, and also spoke directly on the phone with a stakeholder from the school district. All right, Michelle. I'm going to move it into public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms, voicemails, all the things?
I did not receive any request to speak forms. We did receive correspondence that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and has been entered into the record. No voicemails were received. We do have somebody that registered to make public comment via Zoom, and we have Donna Keats on Zoom, so we can move her over if you're ready to do that.
Please do.
Okay. Donna, are you there?
I am.
Hi. Are you ready to
Hi.
make public comment?
I am ready to wing it.
Okay.
Definitely.
You have 3 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay. So I have a couple of problems with these proposals. One is really I'd like you to consider the bigger picture issue of how this is actually really going to help anything. The idea is to solve an affordability problem. This will give us more, and bonuses for 1,800 square feet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we get more, but only more if you can afford more, because the developers don't actually cut their rents just because it costs them less to build it, if you've taken a look around. So there's a little bit of a fallacy, I think, in thinking here that let's just cut out all the requirements, cut out public hearings, cut out whatever all we're going to cut out to make this happen. Yet, even the staff report says repeatedly, we're not expect much out of this. We're just going to tip the needle. And they put an enormous amount of time and effort into this. And I just don't think it's actually doing anything. In the current code, the most recent revisions in the bonuses, et cetera, they actually go all the way down to, I think it's 30% AMI and 45%. They actually spell out. And it encourages the really low income housing, which we need. So nobody's taken us up on it. That's unfortunate. But by taking the bottom cutoff in the tiers to 60%, who's going to then go ahead and take their bonuses and take their no entitlement review process and go ahead and build that, but still make an effort to provide for the really low income people who need this the most? When instead we've got above workforce level housing bonuses and density bonuses for smaller units, et cetera, none of which are going to be affordable to the people who need it most. So I'd like to ask you to consider, the wisdom of some of these changes that are being made, particularly the ones that cut out the very low income people as a specific bonus group and make it into a bigger category so that things can go to market faster. So go to market faster, what we get is more, but we only get more for things that can afford them. I took a little tour through VRBO earlier today, and I saw what's happened to a lot of these studio and one bedrooms that have been built in the Wells Avenue, Midtown, and part of downtown areas. They're all listed as VRBOs. They're not units that people are renting or that can rent, and they're not inexpensive either. And, to be a rented, even if you wanted a long-term tenancy there, they're VRBOs. They're not available to the residents, and I think you have to be a little bit careful about all this sounding so good on paper, but Reno is not every other jurisdiction, and one size doesn't fit all, and Title 18 doesn't just provide background rules that will make everybody do everything the right way, because it doesn't happen like that. And you've been here long enough to know that, because you hear people speak at your meetings all the time about what's happening. And so think if that goes straight to building permit and nobody even gets noticed on anything. And also another comment I want to point out,
Ma'am, your 3 minutes is up. I really appreciate it, though.
Dang it,
Thanks.
one more point.
Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Michelle, any more Zoom?
Nope, that's it.
Cool. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment and open it up to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Velto.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I have a couple questions for you, Angela. I want to talk about the incentives for affordable housing. So I really like the density bumps that you're putting together and proposing. One thing you mentioned, though, is that there's not an accompanying setback or height change. Why is that? It seems like if we were trying to encourage affordable housing and acknowledging that we need more of it, there should be more lenience within the zoning code to allow for that housing to grow. And I think it would be good if we were to, consistent with density bonuses, allow for there to be height and setback bonuses to applicants that were developing this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of our challenges as we've gone through this process with the stakeholders is how do we preserve integrity of existing neighborhoods? Most of our affordable housing projects are within kind of built environments. You generally don't see them in more of the suburban areas. They're more in these infill areas. And we're always cognizant of the fact that we don't want to completely change the look and feel of where anyone lives, right? So if you have a neighborhood of 1- and 2-story houses, and you're bringing in a 5-story, hypothetically, apartment project with 200 units, that's going to change that neighborhood. And so we're trying to find that balance between making things more affordable, but not having such a drastic impact that it's going to negatively impact that neighborhood. There are other tools that, these developers, these affordable housing developers can do. So they can always request to change the zoning to something that allows for more height. So for instance, let's say it's an MF14 zoning, right? You're capped at 2 stories. If you want to go to MF30 zoning, you can do 3 stories. If you want to go to unlimited stories, we have a couple other zoning categories that you can do that. So there's other avenues, I would say, to get there, but we just felt it was probably a little too much, and I don't know that we meaning City of Reno, was quite ready to move the needle in a way that could negatively impact the city.
So I hear what you're saying in terms of you wouldn't want to give somebody a green light to say just because, we're building this many houses or this many units, we can now build a 20-story building.
Correct.
But it seems like there could be a middle ground where accompanying a density bonus, there was some sort of height bonus that would allow for at least one more floor. What would that need to be to make it under the hypothetical where there was a density bonus and then you also get more height to allow for another floor? What would that look like?
Yeah, no, that's definitely something we could add. Again, we have these kind of different breakdowns of how affordable your project is, right? 60% average median income, 80% 120. We could propose that if you are meeting some kind of affordability, you could go up a story or 2 stories, and we would just allow that as part of a kind of a special deviation that would be allowed by right if you met that affordability. And I would say the challenge, to your question is every zoning district is different. So depending on which zoning district they're in, may not be an issue because a lot of our zoning districts do not have height requirements. But a lot of our more residential projects are in our multifamily zoning districts. So they're typically capped at the 3 stories. But we could definitely build something into the code that says we could allow you to go up 1 additional story, again, if you meet these affordability requirements. And we do require that you deed restrict these. So, the concern of, maybe they're only affordable for the first year. No, we actually require that they deed restrict them for 20 years. You have to be affordable for at least 20 years.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a question. I have a few other topics I want to cover. Does anybody have any questions about that?
We'll come back to you.
Okay.
Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Ms. Foos, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and working on this. I just have a couple clarifying questions. How many affordable units must there be? Is there a ratio? So,
In
or
order
does
to
the
meet
whole?
the requirement?
Yeah, so it's 60% of the AMI. To be, that's what affordable, that's how we define affordable. How many of those units, so if I have 100 units, 99 units, does only one of those have to meet that AMI, or?
No, so the whole project must average a 60% AMI. Most of the affordable housing projects have some kind of a ratio. A lot of them are split between, 40% AMI and maybe 65% AMI. So we look at that project as a whole, and they would have to average all the units have to meet a 60% AMI. So again, if they're balancing between, let's say, 80% and 30%, as long as it averages 60% overall, then they would get this bonus.
Okay, so on average, what have you seen? What's an example of that if you can think of one?
Yeah, I mean, again, so we get 2 to 3 affordable housing projects a year, and they either are in like the 40 unit range or more the 200 unit range. There's kind of a couple different housing developers that just do different products. So typically, the folks that are doing more like 40 or 50 units, again, they typically use a 60% AMI. That's just kind of the natural. And I will say, I think there's a reason why they use that, right? They get subsidies from the government, and so there's minimum requirements for the government on how affordability, what percent of affordability they are providing. So most of them will provide like in another 5 units of really, really affordable, like super low income, and then the rest of them, they kind of average in that 45 to 60% AMI, generally speaking.
Okay, so so there, I guess if we had like 50, it's not like we would see 40 come in that are, you know, pretty pricey, and then 10 that come in that are like super low to kind of balance it out and average out at this, or could, I mean, I guess that could be depending on whatever the average was.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd say 99% of the truly affordable housing projects that come in, they all kind of do the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But again, we're trying to encourage more to do that workforce housing, that 80%. We just don't see a lot of that. We would love to see more, right? Because not everybody meets that 60% AMI to even qualify. But, you know, if you are a school teacher, you're not making $104,000 a year, which is what the average median income is.
I was going to ask you, what is
Yeah.
today's average medium? It's 104.
$104,000 for a four-person family.
So 60% of that. Okay.
Yep. So that's a family of four making about $62,000 a year would qualify for 60% AMI.
How would that work? I mean, I guess if it's 1,000, I mean, a family of four in 1,000 square foot unit, have you seen that? I mean, or I guess it could be one person in a 1,000-foot unit, and then in one of the larger units, a family of four.
Yep, and again, most of these housing, affordable housing folks, they specialize in something. So some of them specialize in seniors, right? Seniors are usually 1 and 2 person per unit. Some of them specialize in families, so they build generally bigger units, like 2 or 3 bedroom units. We also have a lot of affordable housing specific to different things, like maybe you are specific to veterans, or I know the Eddie House, they recently came in for a project, and so, you know, they're focused on the youth, you know, the 18 to 25-year-olds. So they all kind of have a little specialty niche that they try to build a product that matches their niche. If you are, you know, doing seniors, you generally need 1-bedroom units. You don't need 3-bedroom units. If you're doing multifamily, obviously you would need more of a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom unit.
One more question and then I'll pass it. Sure. So say, for example, if we were to move forward and we would remove the entitlement process for those less than 100 units, for those projects less than 100 units, what if something were to come forward where there was a matter of like a cut and fill situation? That would still have to come forward because there's another triggering event, right? No?
Nope. So that's what we're talking about, is there's a number of things in our code that trigger an entitlement. And we're saying if it's a conditional use permit or a site plan review, you would be exempt. If it's a variance or a deviation, you would still have to go through that because you're asking for something outside of what the code allows.
I'll hold my other questions. I have so many. Okay, thank you.
And before I get to you, just for clarity, because I always understood AMI as area median income. Is that correct, or is it average median?
I think you're correct. And
It's
I said
area.
It wrong.
Yeah. No, you're good. So, no, you're good. And
Checked over here.
I forget it all the time too. So area median income, and in 103, I had actually had an event where they presented economic data, and it was 83,000 AMI. But
So based on 2023 HUD numbers, and it changes every year, right? Average median income changes every year. 2023 numbers that we utilize, again, HUD puts out this data, not us. They look at every region. So they looked at Washoe County, Reno metropolitan area. Their number was 104,000.
And I think I understood it today that it was a potential single person. And so do you guys calculate it based on HUD's AMI, which is 2 income earners and 2 children? Is that how I understood that?
So I could give you a whole table of responses. But again, if we're just assuming a family of 4,
Yeah, okay.
104,000 is what the average median income is. If you want to talk about, you know, a family of 2 or a family of 8, it all changes. So just to make math simple, let's assume it's a family of 4.
Perfect. And so we have one template, and we slap that onto all these projects, right? We just hold with what you said here, family of 4.
Right.
Okay.
And we have a whole housing division that deals with that stuff, so I don't even want to get into the nuances, but generally speaking, that's what we're dealing with.
You're good. If that's what you're doing, then we're on the same page. I got you. Thank you. Commissioner Belto.
Yeah, thank you. My next topic I want to ask you about is duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. Love that idea. I'm very concerned about requiring a CUP because in that map, I don't know how many projects would satisfy the compatibility requirement of a CUP. So I feel like we're creating this option that won't actually be realized. So what is the reasoning for requiring a CUP and not just allowing it by right in additional areas?
Yep, and kind of the same thing. We, again, this Reno community is either super pro these ideas or super hates these ideas. So we were trying to kind of find that middle ground to sync up what everybody hates that we're doing or loves that we're doing and says you should do more or you're doing too much, what are you doing? So our compromise was let's add 2 more zoning districts, 2 more new single-family zoning districts, but still trigger an entitlement. So there's kind of that comfort level of if they do bring it forward and it's in your neighborhood, there's still a chance to go through that public review process.
Is there a lesser type of review that would not require compatibility? Because I still see these getting killed by compatibility.
It's always going to be a problem. I mean, anytime you do a public hearing, it's going to be an issue. The findings is what makes it tough. I mean, the other option is we just allow it by right, which is something you guys can propose as well.
So what would that language be if we were to allow it by right?
Again, in the ordinance, we proposed which zoning districts would allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex. And so we would just propose to modify that. Instead of triggering a conditional use permit in those 2 new zoning categories, they would be permitted by right. And we may just want to, if you're going to go that route, we have 2 other existing single-family zoning categories that right now you can go through a conditional use permit. So if you're going to allow it by right, you may want to propose to allow it in all single-family by right and not with that conditional use permit.
So it would be to amend the proposed ordinance to allow duplex, triplex, and quadplex by right?
In the SF3, the SF5, SF8, and SF11 zoning districts. Those are our single-family zoning districts.
Tell me why I'm wrong in thinking that this is a good idea.
I mean, again, I think our biggest challenge is we want to get something that can pass. And, we have a deadline of July 1st to get something passed in order to meet that legislative mandate. Change is really hard. And anything with housing is a very sensitive conversation. I fully support where you're going, and I would gladly take that to council. I don't have any concerns with that, other than, again, I don't want to go too far down a road and having, 50 people show up and say, oh, this is going to ruin my neighborhood. But again, look at where you could do it today, and nobody's doing it. So we should be doing more of this. I will add that, we talked to a housing developer today, just somebody who actually is doing duplex, triplex townhomes. And he said, why don't you do more of these? Is there a market for these? And they said, yeah, this is actually a huge market, but it's just not something we see a lot of. So it's not really like, in our brain to do it. We do a ton of single family, because that's what Reno does. But there's all these other different types of development that people actually want to live in, whether they're renting or buying. So I think the more we can do through zoning to make that easier, that definitely helps those developers. And again, if there's some great looking products out there. I think everyone just looks at a duplex and says, oh gosh. But here's just some examples, right? These are great, and these would actually fit in with your average single family neighborhood. So I think that's something we can definitely push forward to council if the planning commission supports that.
What are the type of, sorry, just one quick follow-up. What are the types of developers that pursue this type of development versus the bigger development? I guess part of my concern with requiring a CUP is that my perception is that oftentimes the people that are pursuing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes are more small-scale developers who can't necessarily afford maybe high-powered folks that are able to advocate for their interests. Mm-hmm. So am I inaccurate? Is this more typically like mom and pop shops that are trying to push for these?
I think what we've seen in more recently is it's the smaller infill sites. So, if you're a big housing developer, you're not looking for half an acre to do a couple units. You're looking for bigger property. But this is what we typically see in infill areas. However, that housing developer that I mentioned, D.R. Horton, they are a huge national housing developer. And this is, again, what they're saying is, yeah, we're starting to do more of this. this, duplex, triplex, fourplex, and even just turning them into more of a townhome product so they can sell them, which is more the model of, D.R. Horton, not like a multifamily project. But as Reno starts doing more of this, I will say it attracts more of the big housing developers. Tolls of the world are probably not going to do this type, but the Lennars and the Riders and, some of these housing developers that do a ton of development in the Reno market, if they see this as like people are buying this, then absolutely they jump on this.
Thank you.
Angela, if you don't mind, go back to that map. I'm having trouble reading the legend, and maybe if you want to just expand a little bit more on what I'm seeing here.
Yep, so what we've done is we've broken everything in green is the zoning districts. We have a number of zoning districts where you can do duplex, triplex, and fourplex. So we listed it out, right? We have the 2 single-family zoning districts today where you can do it. We also have 3 different multifamily zoning districts. And then we have all of our mixed-use zoning, our general commercial zoning, neighborhood commercial, pretty much almost every type of zoning district, you can do these today.
In the green.
In the green.
Okay.
And some of those require a conditional use permit, and some are permitted by right. But basically, everything in green has the ability to have duplex, triplex, and fourplex today.
And the orange is?
The orange is 2 zoning districts, SF3 and SF5. So SF3, those are parcels that are 1/4 acre in size, 15,000 square feet. That SF5, those are parcels that are 9,000 square feet. So your average single-family home is usually on like a 6,000 square foot. So these lots are a little bit bigger than your average single-family home. But again, everything in that orange is either a 9,000 square foot or 15,000 square foot zoning.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll stop. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, don't want to forget about you. Do you want to jump in with questions or comments?
Yes, thanks. Great presentation, Angela. I want to follow along with a few questions along the lines of Commissioner Velto in terms of not just building height, but some other text amendments, looking at code, things like parking. I know there are density bonuses, if you will, but sort of reducing parking as an opportunity to build out more land. Where are we on just getting rid of parking potentially for affordable housing?
We currently have some regulations in the zoning code that allow you to have reduced parking if you do affordable housing. So, right, you have to show that it's truly affordable, and we allow you to reduce the parking. What we also have is the ability to submit a letter that basically kind of shows your need and shows why you can even reduce it above and beyond that. Most of our affordable housing projects don't need parking. And again, they, rinse and repeat. They do this very well. They know what their market is. A lot of them actually build near transit so that people that don't have cars can walk or take the bus. So we are extremely flexible with all of our affordable housing projects, and we administratively have flexibility already built in the code that allows them to reduce parking to something that matches their needs.
And then what about these neighborhood plans? Maybe it is time to take a look at neighborhood character in some of these core neighborhoods. The West University comes to mind, Wells Avenue comes to mind. They have things like as you go higher level, you step back, and those kinds of restrictions make it very, very hard to meet the height requirement and get these sort of added density bonuses to achieve those. They're nearly physically impossible, and I've worked for small infill developers who have been up against these challenges. When do you think, or when does the city plan to evaluate these neighborhood plans? Some of these plans date back to the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's seen a lot of change in Reno in the decades.
Absolutely.
So what is the future?
Yep, and so maybe for some of the other commissioners, so we have a couple areas where they have specific neighborhood plans. And the intent was, years ago, generally they're all 20, 30, 40 years old, the community got together in a certain geographic area. Wells Avenue is a great example. And they said, well, what uses do you want to allow, or what additional things do you want to take out? And so it worked at one time because the community rallied together and told the zoning administrator, this is what we want. And so they built regulations around that. Fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, it's a very different demographic. Nobody, that maybe was around when those neighborhood plans were done. They've moved on, maybe interests are different. So that is something on our list of things to do this year, that we're gonna start hitting the existing neighborhood plans. Wells Avenue is probably the first one we're gonna tackle. We are seeing a lot of infill development in Wells Avenue, and so we wanna make sure that we're trying to get in front of the curve before these developers come in and just run into these roadblocks, so to speak. So it's on the list for 2024 to revisit the Wells Avenue, probably 2025 before we revisit the West University neighborhood plan.
Great, because I personally think you'll see a lot of progress in revisiting those. But I did want to ask you, you brought up change in zoning. What are I know this is a state issue, but if you try to increase zoning, are developers going to butt up against that spot zoning issue? If they try to jump one parcel from like an MF 21 to an MF 30, but there's no other 30s nearby, is that still going to be a barrier?
It is. I mean, I would say that I don't know that we have a solution with this housing initiative to address that. In other words, if you've got a neighborhood where everything in it is zoned single family, and you have somebody that comes in and says, I want to rezone this to MF30, would we look at that as spot zoning? I would say we would look at each one on a case-by-case basis. Is it on an arterial? How is the area built? And sometimes we have zoning that doesn't actually match what's been built over the years. So we would look at each one individually and just try and, again, work with each developer. But I don't have a good answer to say that, yep, we would allow it. I think the answer is we'd look at each request as it comes in.
Right, but maybe there's potential to look at a larger context than just what is adjacent.
Yeah, and we've had a couple zone changes, I would say, in the last couple years where we've really took a step back and tried to be, I would say, more open-minded as city planners to say, again, if city council is prioritizing infill, what can we do to help that along? So looking at zoning is something that we can definitely help support when those applications come in.
All right, and if you'll entertain just one more question. All of the discussion has been around rental housing for affordability. There are some nice examples in Reno of ownership of affordable housing, like, was that Highland Ranch or Highland Park up kind of off Parr Boulevard, where 40 single-family homes were built at an affordable level. Are we working as a city towards like reduced entitlement? I don't know how you can get away from, say, a tentative map, but like some ways to encourage ownership options.
From a zoning code perspective, you're right. We cannot get around a tentative map. That's a state law requirement. So from that perspective, every single-family development will trigger a tentative map, and that does require planning commission approval. We also just don't get a ton of low-income subsidized single-family development. I can think of one we partnered with, maybe on the Community Foundation out in Golden Valley. I think they were trying to do 14 units. So what the city did was they donated land. Not something that helped them get to market faster, but definitely made it more affordable for them to do that. So we are looking at kind of bigger picture, who can we partner with and what can we as a city do to help them, but not so much from a zoning perspective.
Yes, maybe with one sort of follow-up to that, and then I'll stop and let all the other commissioners jump in. The letter from the Washoe County School District, then is that an opportunity?
Yes, so the letter from the school district, they are asking if we can allow multifamily development in public facility zoning. I want to kind of backtrack into where this came from. So Washoe County School District, they spent about 2 years going through this new modernization plan where they're coming up with new concepts, right? How do they either fix existing schools? Maybe they're going to tear down some schools. What can they do to fill in those spaces after those schools are torn down? So we took a look just at all of the parcels in Reno that are owned by a school, whether it's Washoe County School District or a private school. We have about 90 parcels in the city of Reno that are school owned, and of that, there's about 38 that are zoned public facility. So 38 parcels citywide that are owned by a school are zoned public facility. We then looked at the modernization plan And there's probably about 6 schools that they're looking at potentially tearing down and, kind of reutilizing as something else. So you're asking us to change the entire city policy on multifamily in public facility zoning for 6 parcels. The unintended consequence, I will tell you, is that public facility zoning is meant for things like schools and churches, libraries, courthouses, fire stations. It was never intended for multifamily. We have public facility zoning. It's really a spot zoning because it's a unique zoning, but it's in areas like industrial areas and open space areas. I don't want to have multifamily in areas that aren't suited for multifamily. So if you have an industrial area and now we're allowing multifamily where there's no sidewalks, there's no bus transit, there's no access to grocery stores, that's an unintended consequence that as a city, that's more of a burden to us because we're kind of doing a disservice to low income or even multifamily by allowing it in these areas. I said the other concern we have is, we have a lot of developers that try to look for loopholes. And so if they're thinking, I can't do multifamily, what if I zone it to public facility? Because you don't have to tell us what you're going to build on it at a zone change. I'm going to build a church. So I'm going to zone it public facility. And then you sell it, and somebody comes in and does multifamily in an area that's not appropriate at all for multifamily. So I just want to be cautious that while the school district we completely support, it's 6 parcels that we're talking about, right? That would be public facility zoned that potentially you want to use as multifamily. I do have another path forward for them. If they don't want to pay for the zone change and go through the process, they can ask City Council to initiate a zone change. And City Council will then tell staff to do it. So the path forward, if they want to do a zone change and not have to pay for it or spend the time and resources, is to ask City Council to initiate that change, and then we do it for them. Again, that's a citywide change, policy change to allow multifamily and public facility zoning. We have 300 parcels in the city zone public facility. They are not ripe or appropriate for multifamily. We'd have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis. So just be careful of those unintended consequences when, again, we're talking 6 parcels that the school district has potentially to use for multifamily. So no, I don't recommend that we do that change.
All right, you good, Commissioner Rohrmeyer?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm looking at one of the revisions. It's there's no page numbers. Let's just, looks like it's section A3B, and we're looking at multifamily. So this is M14, multifamily 21, 30, NC, and GC. And are you there? Okay, great. And you see the top number 1, it's been strike through. And this is, of course, what we've been talking about. But I think we've been talking about it in the context of affordable. This doesn't say affordable. It just says multifamily. So does this mean any multifamily, affordable or not affordable, would not have to be subject to the entitlement process?
That's correct. This would be universal, citywide, those zoning categories that you're looking at. That's our multifamily zoning, our neighborhood commercial, our general commercial, professional office. Right now, we trigger a minor conditional use permit if they're between 20 and 100. We're saying delete that and allow multifamily development to go by right straight to building permit. You still have to meet all our code requirements. You're not circumventing building code or zoning code. You still have to do all that, but you would not have to go through that public hearing process.
Whenever triggered, right? Because there are certain things that would trigger a review process. And
so, correct. I mean, that specific to all development, regardless of affordability, we're saying strike that particular regulation that says less than 100 units right now go through that minor conditional use permit. So if you triggered, let's say, a conditional use permit for grading, you would still have to do that.
You would still have to come forward for that? Okay.
Now, the other question you brought up was related to affordable housing. For affordable housing, you would not. We're saying you get a pass, you would trigger no entitlements because you're affordable and go straight to a building permit.
Okay, and in this case, it's not specific to affordable, it's just multifamily. So you would not have to, so it's removing the minor conditional use permit.
Yep, anything over 100 units would still be a conditional use permit, so we're not proposing to change that.
Yeah, over 100.
It's just that less than 100 that we're proposing to go back to a building permit by right.
What, can you give me, and I'm trying to think of one, the only one I could think of was like grading and cuts and fills. What's another thing that would ultimately trigger a review by us?
Yeah, generally the ones that you guys see is the grading, again, that, cuts and fills. Typically, that's the big one that you guys see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think if you, major drainage ways would trigger a review. If you're, touching a major drainage way, any kind of significant hydrologic resource, you don't see a lot of those.
So regardless, then, so just because they don't have to come forward to develop, their 100 units or 99 units, if something like that were to exist, a grading issue or something else, they would still have to come in front of us.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I'm probably going to have other questions, but I'm going to pass it as I look at that. Thank you.
Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you. Great presentation, Angela. Just want to start off by thanking the school district for at least reaching out to explore ideas, to at least try to be part of the solution there. Thanks for adding that context, Angela, as well. I was curious, just to kind of level set, how many homes are we behind? Like, what are we trying to catch up to?
Oh, I don't have a number.
Okay.
You ask EDON and we're, short 5 million homes.
Okay.
You ask, I don't know that there is a number that we need, that we're aiming for. I will say though, like affordability, it doesn't matter if it's market rate affordability or, subsidized affordability. I think the average house in the month of, December was $600,000. That's a lot. So we have a supply issue, we have a cost issue, and it's at all levels of the price range. It's not just the low income. It is every housing price, kind of range across the board.
Okay.
And I might be able to help you out with that, because you may not have been here for the Truckee Meadows Regional Report. I think it was before you got here.
Okay.
So Washoe County, I believe, if I remember correctly, has 91,000 entitlements up. That's the entire county.
Wow.
And then they're projecting by 2030, I believe it was an 8% increase in population. And then notably to your point, as a realtor, any segment of housing helps alleviate pricing, because really it's supply and demand, 100%. It's what we're seeing. Median home value in December was $565, and we're probably going to go down just a hair again. But yeah, we still got pretty dang close to 600 again. And you could argue it has almost everything to do with supply and demand. And so as people come in, EDON presented today, the jobs they're bringing in, the average salary has been going up consistently for 5 years. So now you're bringing in folks who are moving here, make more money than the average citizen in town, and scooping up properties, bringing up prices, and really pushing, I would argue, workforce folks, maybe to Fernley, Dayton, Silver Springs. And so this type of product I've always been preaching is really healthy for people to stay near their jobs. You could make the argument that if you're a plumber and you can't afford to work at your job, which is in Reno, and you now live in Fernley, now you've added 2 hours of drive time, 2 hours away from your family, just so you can have a house that, is sufficient for their needs. So this type of product goes a long way. I'm excited about this. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. Keep going.
I appreciate it, actually. Thanks for the added context, Chair. Much appreciated. And that kind of tees me up for my next question. And I'm all for this, actually. It's easy to do nothing out of fear of overthinking, right, or just overanalysis. So I applaud this. My line of questioning is more educational, just kind of set us up for what we're aiming for here. How will the city monitor the effectiveness of these amendments, specifically in increasing the affordable housing, like 2 months from now, 4 months from now, 2 years from now?
That's a great question, too. I think, this was a good lesson for us as staff to go back and look at the last 3 years. And we used 3 years because that's when our zoning code was updated. So we added this density bonus, things that we hadn't done previously are now in code. We said, well, let's just start a baseline. Is it making a difference? And so we did all the data of, how many duplexes have we had in the last 6 or 3 years, and how many projects, went through a minor conditional use permit that if we change this could go by right. And so it was good kind of data gathering for us to look at. So I would propose that we kind of on a yearly basis go back and evaluate the data and see if we're moving the needle. And I think council will likely ask us to come back on a regular basis and tell them, are these changes working or not?
Okay, thanks, Angela. And just one more for Dell. With these changes, what can we expect as Planning Commission moving forward? In other words, should we expect more of something, less of certain applications? Does it free us up to look at other things? Just curious there.
Yeah, I think let's just look at the affordable housing projects. In 3 years, you guys have looked at 5 affordable housing projects. They triggered some kind of entitlement. So if we add a rule that affordable housing projects don't have to go through an entitlement, you won't be reviewing those projects anymore. Same if we get more duplex, triplex, fourplex. They can either trigger a conditional use permit, which you would see, or they can be allowed by right if Mr. Velto's going to make that proposal. So I think you will be reviewing less applications because what we're proposing is less public review because of the time and the money and the uncertainty. So your meetings might be shorter if that's what you're looking for.
Oh, no, just curious.
But I think separate from that is, we'll be opening this up to more development that maybe as just a person living in the city, like, oh, great, I was always wondering why that little infill site never got developed. Well, maybe now it pencils for somebody to be able to do it. So, the hope there is that we would get more of these great infill projects that developers aren't doing today for whatever reason. This gives them the ability to maybe go to building permit. And again, they all tell us we can avoid a public hearing. Whew, that'd be great.
Absolutely. And just wanted one clarity, because you gave an example of the 7-unit apartment complex during your presentation. I want to say they rolled through us, and they were unfortunately denied at the time. But are you saying they benefited from this?
So they did use a density bonus as part of the calculation to figure out how many units they can get.
Good. Okay, I'm glad. Okay, problem solved.
Great.
Discussion?
Sure, discussion. Commissioner Villanueva.
No, I was going to say I am also ready for discussion, so I will defer for questions.
Commissioner Villanueva, you want back in? Green light, green light. Hit the green, there you go. I can see, it's awesome. Are you kidding me?
Thank you. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit, but I'm now looking at this part. Section 18.04.905, it's strike through additional standards for multifamily districts. It says any project requiring a conditional use permit in a multifamily district shall have a minimum 20-foot setback. So that's being stricken. What does that mean?
What section are you in?
Sorry, I spoke quite quickly. So 18.04.
Is that in the density bonus section that you're looking at?
I don't think so.
It's 5 point, or, oh my God, the page number.
No.
1804 to 905? Is that?
Yes. It doesn't
Yes.
look like it is. Am I missing that?
1804 905.
It's been stricken?
Yes. Yep. So this is one of those that it's kind of a weird little Easter egg. So it basically says only if your project requires a conditional use permit do you have this additional setback, but only if it requires a conditional use permit. That just seemed ridiculous to us. Either it's a setback or it's not, right? If it can go by right, it doesn't trigger that additional setback, but if it has to go through a public hearing, then you have to have a bigger setback. I don't really know what the logic was as to why that was even in code. It should be, here's your setback, meet it or not. Not like, well, if you have to go through an entitlement, we're going to give you a bigger requirement for a setback. There's just no logic in our mind as to why that was even in code.
So would the setback still exist?
You have a setback that's based on whatever your zoning district is.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that would remain in place.
And I should say, so this is saying, if you're a conditional use permit, if you're triggering a conditional use permit and you're a multifamily, you need 20 feet from any property line abutting single-family zoning districts. Right now, most of our multifamily zoning districts from a side setback, I think are more like a 5 foot, maybe even 7 foot setback. So this is basically saying now you have a 20-foot setback. Again, that is like one of the biggest barriers to infill, a 20-foot setback in an infill area.
From resident, from single family though.
Yep, multifamily next to single family. What we
So,
also
yeah, which single family though, like that means a big apartment goes up right next to a single family residence. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Please continue.
So code already has additional setback requirements if you are multifamily next to single family. So this is something that wasn't also needed because we want to make it universal, not whether it's a CUP, a conditional use permit or not. So we have other sections of code that require bigger setbacks if you're multifamily next to single family.
Okay, so that I can understand clearly, if we give this, if we allow for the entitlement for 99 units, up to 99 units, there is already a setback for that, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and you probably don't know what that is off the top of your head, do you?
So it depends on your zoning district.
Okay.
Every zoning district has a different setback.
Got it.
But again, if you're next to single family, we have additional setback requirements.
Okay, and so in this case, it says with conditional use permit, so that would mean anything 100, well, depending on the zoning district, 100 units or more. And so in that case, we're striking this is not going to apply.
Correct.
But a restriction will apply, it's just going to be consistent across the board.
Yep, and honestly, I don't even know if half of our staff even knows this is in here. It is a weird one-liner that's mixed in the middle of 750 pages that you would have to know it's there to even know it's there.
Okay.
If that makes me feel so much better knowing that we're getting rid of those hidden Easter eggs, make it consistent, right?
Okay. All right, I have to be cautious because, like you said, they're bad actors. And I saw the original bill, AB 213, and that was a terrible bill originally. And so I just have to be cautious on where people are trying to sneak stuff in. So thank you.
Yep.
No further questions.
That's just one more question.
Please, go ahead.
Were there other ideas that you had to increase affordable housing that didn't make it into this that you think?
Specific to affordable housing or just housing in general?
As you were putting together these changes, were there other ideas you had that you thought would be good that you just chose not to put in?
Yeah, I mean, we hired a consultant, Shane Phillips. He's an author of a book called The Affordable City. The City of Reno hired him to look at Reno, look at our zoning, look at our master plan, look at our housing policies, and make some recommendations. We had him present to City Council, and I think the feedback from City Council was kind of split. You know, he came up with some ideas, for instance, of right now, the most density you could get from multifamily is 30 units per acre. So our multifamily zoning is capped at 30 units per acre. He was proposing to citywide double that. So add a new zoning category for MF 60, right? Great concept. I don't know that we were quite ready for something that drastic. And so this was kind of our first attempt from staff's perspective, our first attempt to let's try something, because doing nothing is not an option, especially in this mandate from the state legislature. So what can we do both from an affordability side and from some of this, missing middle and smaller things. We feel that these are things that aren't negatively going to impact our residents, and that again was in the back of our mind is we could double what we're proposing. But I also just want to slowly, incrementally make these changes, and if it means we have to come back every year and say, City Council, here's what we've done, right? Here's the housing projects that have moved forward. And they may say, great, do more. But we are just very cognizant of the fact that it is tough to make housing reform on something that I think is still scary for people. And so we want to do it in a way that is kind of mindful of looking out for existing, neighbors, but doing something that really addresses what, AB 213 is asking us to do.
And then, one more thing. So Commissioner Romar asked about, and I might be mischaracterizing it, what I heard about potentially addressing setbacks as part of this. What would that look like to reduce the setback requirement for affordable housing? Like, how would you phrase that?
I think, let's go back. What we proposed is, if you're meeting that 60% AMI, that's kind of the base for affordability, we're saying you get out of entitlement review. But right now, we're not proposing to exempt you from a variance or a deviation, right? That's something that's above and beyond what code allows. I think if you wanted to go an extra step further, you could say, no, this includes deviations and variances, meaning you can go taller, you can build more stories by right. There's no limit on any of that if you meet that affordability requirement.
Specific to setbacks, though, would it be like, I guess, the setback is lessened by 10 feet?
And if what you're proposing is you're exempt from everything. So if your setback on your side is 5 feet, you can go up to the property line.
So I would love that personally. I don't know how palatable that might be for, so I'm trying to get to a middle ground as a proposal that might be, move the needle further than maybe as this is presented.
I think if you're trying to do more, I think that the setback is probably not such a big issue. The height would definitely help developers. If they could exceed the height and exceed the number of stories, that gives them a lot more flexibility.
Thank you.
If I may, to your first point, was it ever discussed, and I'm not a fan of following California's policies, but I believe the governor eliminated SF zoning. Was that ever discussed?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Just curious. That was curiosity.
No.
I'm not saying do it. Okay.
On the record. Chair Draculich.
Exactly. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I know you're virtual. Do you want to jump in one more time? We might slide into discussion here, I think.
Oh, I'm ready for discussion.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
You may, please.
Can I request a 5-minute break?
You may.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
5 minutes. See you at 8:25. 27. All right, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. All right, we're going to slide into discussion, I believe. Commissioner Velto.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm so excited that you brought this to us. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to actually make a difference in the zoning code. It is not often that we are given the opportunity to amend the zoning code to actually increase housing and especially increase affordable housing. Because of that, I would be supportive of two different amendments to this code in addition to what is proposed. The first would be to add an entitlement for height deviation by right for 2 additional stories if the project meets the affordable housing requirement. And the second would be to allow by right duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in SF3, SF5, SF8, and SF11. I'm very concerned with the language that was proposed that requires a CUP because I don't see those getting built in a majority of what is marked as yellow. And if we're acknowledging that these are good and that we should be building them, I think that that should be by right. So those are 2 things I would request. If you all have other ideas to kind of expand these options, I'd also be very interested in hearing them. But those are 2 things that I think are really important if we're actually trying to make a difference and improve affordable housing.
Thank you for that. I'm on your page. Angela, if you don't mind, where does this go next? Because to your point, I like it. I just feel like maybe the SF 3, 5, 8, and 11 maybe deserves a little bit more public awareness and maybe public discussion around that. I could see how all of this probably deserves that, but that one deserves it probably a bit. So where does this go next, and how will the public know?
Because this is a recommendation to City Council, the next step would be a City Council first reading. We actually have to go to City Council twice. We are looking to go in March and April for first and second reading.
And then council to the state?
Nope, then we are done. This is just a zoning code, so we have full jurisdiction over these things.
And so when you were saying earlier that you were worried about adding certain things in here because of the potential of it being passed, is that specifically about how the council will look at it?
My concern that maybe we're going too far, more of that comment. Yeah, I mean, again, our goal here is to get something that council will support, which means the community has to support it. So I just wanted to make sure that we provided something that's making an effort to move it, but not something that's, again, doubling density, like, again, some of the recommendations from Mr. Shane Phillips' report. So this again, was kind of our middle ground of, I think we can get to a yes. I think our council can get to a yes on these initiatives, but I am more than happy to bring something forward that is as you have recommended.
And the one point I'll say on that is I'd rather ask for too much from council and have council make changes than ask for too little and have council still make changes. There's going to be public comment and people that are opposed to this at the council meeting. If we give them more things to potentially deal, while I hope that they don't deal any of these and that these actually get put into code, that gives them more leverage to make concessions in the event that there is a lot of public backlash.
I'm willing to support a motion with those additions as long as it's going to council and has public discussion awareness. So I'm with you. Maybe it gets done. Hopefully, there's a robust conversation with more of our leaders and citizens. So anyway, I'll stop there. Commissioner Villanueva?
Can we have 2 separate motions? Can we have 2 separate motions? I think staff spent a lot of time on this, and they had 3 separate stakeholder meetings, and I know they've been working on this for a while. And so we can try 2 separate motions. I think I'd be in support of moving this forward as is. Just because I sat in on the stakeholder meetings, I saw what they did, I read through this, and I think that would be appropriate at this stage. Council, you can have a conversation with council and propose those changes to them on, personally. You can also attend those meetings personally and share that with them if they want to add that at that meeting. If it doesn't get approved here, this is not the end. But I think, from what was presented, two motions, one as is, and then one with the additions that was proposed by Commissioner Velto, depending on if one gets passed or not.
Can we even do that? I guess that's new to me.
This is Jasmine Mehta with the
thanks.
City Attorney's Office. No, you would have one motion on the table.
Yeah.
If it passes, whether it's as is or with the amendment, then you would be done. If it doesn't pass, then you could make a new motion.
And to your point, I think what Commissioner Velto is saying is let's give it to the council formally, then kind of hit it meeting my criteria is that's going to be in a staff report and it'll be essentially public. And then if they want to have that conversation to pull it off, they can, instead of not approving those changes and then bringing them up the day of the meeting, I think would take away the public discussion about it.
It's a very sensitive button. The conversation can always happen, but my concern with that is sort of what staff mentioned, too much too soon. Also, I mean, going back to the vision on what we foresee, I'm very much in support of affordable housing. I'm very much in support of multifamily over single family. But at the same time, a lot of folks live in this region because of the aesthetic beauty of it. And if we just let, them run rampant, in all of the areas listed above, it could cause issues with some of the aesthetic nature that comes with living in the city of Reno. And so I'd be happy to make a motion now to move forward with this as submitted. And then if that fails, you guys can make a separate motion and then see if that is approved.
Let's get the temperature going with the discussion. We'll go to Commissioner Rohrmeyer. Feel free to jump, and then I'll swing back to the rest of y'all here.
Great. I squarely am in support of Commissioner Velto's amendments. If it were up to me personally, I would go much farther. I think it is time to recognize that the city of Reno is a desirable city. People are moving here. Jobs are good. The housing supply is too few and too expensive. And we need to do everything we can. Me personally, as a planning commissioner, that was one of the reasons I wanted to be on this board, to address this issue. I would entertain multifamily 45. I would entertain zero parking requirements for affordable housing. I would entertain no major or minor deviations for setbacks and step back requirements and driveway setbacks off alleyways. And there are a lot of little things in code that I think can achieve quite a lot that density bonuses strive for but can't actually implement. So I'm game for as far as we can go with this board. Count me in.
Okay, Commissioner Becerra.
Ditto. I think my fellow commissioners said it really poignantly, and I would stand right behind them and alongside them with those changes, going to as far as we can to put something forward that if city council felt more reserved about, they can scale back. But if they also felt like they had the appetite for, it would make drastic changes sooner rather than later.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Thank you. I just would like to commend city staff for bringing this to us. To Commissioner Velto's point, it's very rare that we actually get to have an impact like this, so it's not lost on me. I think that what you've proposed is very much in alignment with what I've heard and what I understand about development. I think you've made changes that will make it a lot easier for these projects to pencil and hopefully make them more attractive so we see more of them. Just increasing the amount of units, just from an economic perspective, I think will have a major impact that at present probably deters a lot of developers, especially those that are less sophisticated. They don't have the administrative ability to go through kind of a formal process like this. So I very much support that. I'd also be supportive of the amendments that Commissioner Velto put forward. I would rather formally provide the city council with something, as robust as we can within reason. They can make those changes, but I like the public process, the input. I like that there are 2 readings that gives folks a lot of time to opine on it. So I will be in support of this as presented with the 2 amendments. Thank you.
Commissioner Munoz, if comment at all.
Yeah, Commissioner Munoz for the record. This is something that Ward 4 and something that I can see having a huge impact up there. I can see it having less of an impact down South Reno, less of an impact in Verdi. And so I'm hesitant with adding anything extra. From the time I've got here until the time I will leave, I've always pushed development up in that area away from housing right now. And I believe there's a time and a place for it, but I've always pushed that away because I believe the amenities and the infrastructure up there is not suitable for this. It is just not, it's not sustainable. I believe it will get there, and I believe it is getting there. And there is some things in the work up there in the works that are slowly making life a little more bearable. Traffic has always been a huge one, and anything that makes affordable housing come in a lot quicker right now is not a good option for the North Valleys. This is, and I can see all the work that staff did. This seems like what they have proposed, the way they've proposed it, is what fits right now. Will this be enough in 6 months? Probably not. The way we're growing, the way things are changing, probably not. It's going to be something like Angela said, it's going to be revisited each year. It's going to have to be revisited and revised in order to continue to work. So I do understand where Commissioner Valto is coming from. I do agree with most of that for most of the city, but not for Ward 4, which is where I'm representing. So as it is proposed now is how I'll be voting. With the amendments that are potentially going to be brought forth, I will be voting no on those. That's where I stand right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Velto.
So Commissioner Munoz, I hear what you're saying. I want there to be a lot of more commercial, a lot of more infrastructure in your ward. I guess I would hope that by making it more affordable to develop, developers might be more interested in developing in the inner core of Reno and in areas that they aren't able to develop in because it doesn't pencil out because the property might be more expensive, there might be smaller lots. And I think by encouraging these changes, you might see a shift towards a different area of town. I don't know that to be true. That's just a thought I have. And I hear what you're saying. I think, though, I got on the planning commission to try to increase affordable housing because when I got on, I couldn't afford to buy a house. My rent was through the roof. And that's been a huge focus of mine since I got on the commission. So I respect where you're coming from. I just think that maybe it's because of where I live and it's not as close to me as where you live. I might have a different perspective on it. The second point I want to address is Commissioner Rohrmar's, I'm in agreement with you. I want to push the needle as far as possible. I just want to see if it's palatable for the commission. Some of the things you mentioned were allowing multifamily 45, and then you said some other things that I didn't fully understand. So, if you were to say, if you could pitch maybe one or two of those to the rest of the commission so that we might maybe better understand it. I understand you have a very unique skill set and experience that gives you an understanding of this at a much higher level than myself. So maybe if you could identify some of those and help me understand and help us understand why those might want to be included.
Sure. No, I appreciate the discussion very much. And I understand that we have a spectrum of ideas here and opinions based on our own experiences. And I fully respect that as part of the process. Things like some of the text-specific items we're trying to address really target just two areas in the urban core, and that is Wells Avenue neighborhood and the West University neighborhood. Because they have such strict neighborhood character plans, they restrict the ability to build. Even if you have an incredible density bonus and that you could build unlimited, second and third stories have to be pushed back so that they have added setbacks, which make the amount of building footprint on those stories very, very small. So even if you can go up, you're now being constricted. So that is one way to kill density. The other way is on ground floor parking. You know, it'd be wonderful if every developer could afford subterranean parking garages, but that's not realistic. So parking becomes a surface nightmare. It eats up a lot of land. So those are two ways: maximizing the airspace, maximizing the ground space by getting rid of parking, that you can increase the ability to build out a lot. So by getting rid of minor and major deviations in those multifamily developments, you're allowing for code to be varied without having to go through a variance to come before us to ask for a case-by-case review. So those are some additional ways, in addition to going 1 or 2 stories taller, that could help. There are also some very minor things that could just be addressed in a code cleanup in the future. There's a silly requirement about 20-foot parking driveways and things like that. But specifically, the major and the minor deviation around parking and step backs, which are different than setbacks, but sound very similar, are 2 additional amendments we might consider. And I recognize that maybe the city of Reno isn't ready for MF 45, but I certainly am when the time comes. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
You may.
If I could just get clarification. So it sounds like what a proposed amendment would be amendment to remove minor and major deviation setback requirements on affordable housing developments, and then remove minor and major deviation parking requirements on affordable housing projects. Is that a fair way of stating it?
I don't even think regarding parking, you can just say remove parking requirements for affordable housing. I don't think it even needs to be a major or minor deviation. You could just remove parking requirements. And developers will still put parking spaces because they recognize the need fiscally to have a few spaces. But the developers that do affordable housing know the parking standards very well. And they definitely try to cite by transit, which again serves the core and recognizes that the core is the most valuable land for affordable housing, not so much in the north and south peripheries. And so I believe very strongly that getting rid of a parking requirement would save a lot of headaches for both developers and the city, just for affordable housing. And this is not a market rate offer.
Could we gauge the climate of the rest of the commissioners on those ideas?
Commissioner Becerra, please.
Sure. I like it, and I also hear Commissioner Muniz and his concerns. I'm almost wondering, since it sounds like we're all in alignment that this is something that we're going to have to iterate on year after year for a little while or every 6 months, I'm wondering if the amendment could be further amended to maybe run as a pilot where those amendments would be within like a certain corridor, like the McCarran Loop or something, to really gauge how things go before opening up the floodgates. And then that prevents these amendments to leak out into Ward 4 and other areas. And we can all assess how things are going after 6 months or a year and so forth. And who knows, maybe it's going wonderful and Commissioner Muniz is like, let's go. Or maybe it's like, no, let's keep things a little tight, right? So I'm for it, and I just wanted to throw that kind of suggestion out there as something to consider for folks.
Chair,
Please go ahead.
may I just want to make it clear, I generally agree with Commissioner Velto and Commissioner Romeyer. My concern, though, is, again, just doing too much too quickly. And, I mean, I'm very much in support of limiting parking, more walkability, all of those things. But the problem is, I mean, I really like the suggestion. I didn't even think about it earlier, but can we just limit it to, you know, do we have to do it to the entire city? Do we have to make it available to the entire city? Can we just limit it to certain districts and certain corridors if we're going to really push the needle? We don't need to push the needle across the entire city. And so generally speaking, yes, I'm in favor of those things overall, but is now the right time? I would, again, I'd you know, be more aligned with what Commissioner Becerra said if we can really limit it. But I would certainly not be in favor of just pushing the needle all the way right now. So if we are going to make a motion, I'd encourage that we either have a motion first approving as is, or in the alternative, a motion with the suggestion from Commissioner Becerra. And then if that fails, we can have the second motion as suggested by Commissioner Velto and Commissioner Romeyer.
Let's keep the conversation going based on that line from Rohrmeyer, but I hear you, and we'll address that in a minute. Commissioner Munoz, looks like you want to chime in.
Yeah, so if that is a possibility, if there is a corridor or an area that we can push the needle and get a test program or a year or 6 months of let's see how this goes, then I would be all for all of those.
Yeah,
Something like that in the code.
So from a reality, nothing will be built in 6 months or even a year, right? It takes, affordable housing projects generally have a 2-year cycle from the time they start asking for money from the state to the time they actually get the money, to the time they submit a building permit, and then it starts building. So we won't see any of this come to fruition until you adopt it, and then they hit their next round of development. I mean, it's gonna be probably 3 to 4 years before you see something built with these standards. Again, it takes forever to do development, especially with affordable housing where there's money tied and you have to get the money first.
Yep, understood. And it'd be weird to put that into code as like a
I wouldn't recommend that. I don't even know that that's legal.
fair.
One more comment, just a quick additional comment regarding the, regarding the setbacks, step backs, deviations, all of those things. We're not stopping that from happening. They can always come forward. This is with respect to entitlements for affordable housing. And so that's all we're doing. They can still come back. They can still get the deviation. It's just, yes, it's an additional hurdle. But I think, again, if we just limit that, again, I'm in favor of those things, generally speaking. And I think we can get there. I just don't know that we need to do that right now. And so I think we will get there eventually, and I'm hoping that we get there. But again, in time and, process, there's a process. And when, infrastructure is a big deal. And so we also need to take that into consideration. So thank you.
Small aside with our new technology, whenever you're done speaking, mic off, we're getting echo. I'm the most guilty here on that, so just a small aside. But that's it. Commissioner Armstrong, feel free if you have some points to make. We've kind of heard from everybody. We'll keep it going, but.
I would generally be in favor of pushing the needle. So to the extent that there's a motion for, I guess it's 4 amendments now, or 3? I think it's 4.
I'd be ready to make a motion. We could see how it goes. My impression was Commissioner Villanueva's request to make a motion to pass the original it as proposed. If that motion wants to go first, I will be voting against it to make a subsequent motion, but I would defer to the chair as to how the chair would like to.
Yeah, concur.
New stuff. I guess I would like to see the aggressive motions first and work our way down. That would be my choice. Open to discussion about that. This is just kind of a new kind of strategy. That's my opinion at the moment.
Okay, with that,
Sure. I'm going to kind of go back to what I proposed. I'm not entirely clear as to why it's not doable to have a sort of A/B test where outside of a corridor, again, I'm just thinking outside of the McCarran Loop. That's something that we maybe all have familiarity with. Outside the McCarran Loop, it's the motion that's on the floor now, right? It's like, this is what we're doing. But within the McCarran Loop, as a B test, we would have the more aggressive version, right? It doesn't mean we're not doing anything anywhere. It just means that in a certain location, we're going to test pilot a different version that's a little bit more aggressive. And then in the outer areas, what's being proposed tonight is still there, but it's a bit more conservative. Would you be able to help me understand why that's not doable?
Your mic on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So, yeah, I don't want you to put a time limit on this practice trial run.
Sure.
This is code. We adopt it until it's re-adopted again.
Okay.
If you want to allow affordable housing with those added, deviations by right to a certain area, you absolutely can do that.
Goodness. Because I do agree we should do something, and we need to do it, yesterday. And I do want to be mindful that certain areas may not be just yet ready, as in Ward 4 perhaps. And I just think that an A/B type test, in my world, I guess that's what we would call it, is totally doable, like a staggered rollout. And then that way we have 2 data points to assess what's working, what's not, and maybe there's another option down the road. And that's what I would put forth for the rest of my commissioners to consider is an alternative to the amendment, which is the original motion and within a certain corridor. And I'm just willy-nilly throwing out McCarran Loop because that's what I know. But we can adjust it to whatever everyone else might be more comfortable with. We do a more aggressive approach, which I would be in favor.
Commissioner Valto.
Commissioner Becerra, I hear what you're saying. I think my concern with that proposal is that there's already a finite amount of land in Reno, and I think we're kind of too late to do a test case. There is so many people moving into the town. There's so many people that need access to housing. If we draw geographic boundaries that excludes land that can be developed, we're handicapping our ability to really maximize the benefits of providing for affordable housing. And if we were to put in code, say, only in the McCarran Loop, we're excluding a large portion of land that could be developed and could become affordable housing. And we're doing it in areas that are more traditionally expensive real estate, which is already going to make it more difficult for developers to build on. So I don't want to, if our goal is to increase affordable housing, I want to do that at all costs. And I don't like capping us in an area with the hope that we'll see this as effective 5 or 6 years down the road, when if it's effective 5 or 6 years down the road, we've lost out on a bunch of housing that could have reduced the cost of people who can't afford rent, having to move in with their parents because they can't afford rent any longer. When I'm weighing these values, that's where I see is that we need to prioritize affordable housing.
Sure. I think a map might be more helpful, and I totally hear what you're saying. Angela, would you mind bringing up that map with the 2 colors, I think? There we go. What I'm proposing is saying, let's do something, right? As a baseline across the board, we would do the motion that's on the table, right? If you're saying that even if we did that, it wouldn't be successful, then that motion should be DOA, right? We shouldn't even be considering it. But I think we all agree that we should be doing something. So outside of a certain corridor, let's just say McCarran Loop, we would do the motion that's on the floor as presented. But within the McCarran Loop, we would do the more aggressive approach. So I'm not saying we wouldn't do anything. I'm just saying that as a balanced approach, we would do what's being presented this evening by staff outside, in the kind of more outskirts of town, and within a certain area, like the McCarran Loop, we would do something more aggressive. So I just want to be clear that we would be doing something.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm not in love with that still. And to help, and we'll keep the discussion going, what I'd like to see in my reasoning for it is I think if we all don't like anything that's on the table, but we like just as is, I feel like we're all a consensus that would take that. So I feel like that's our baseline, and I feel like we're going to kind of walk down. So personally, I would like to see the aggressive approach, like I stated, first as a motion, see how that lays out. If not, I would like to see back to Commissioner Velto's original 2 additions, see how that works. And if not, I think we can all agree that we should have some progress tonight and send something up to the council and go as is. So that's just my brain into the mic right now, just for your guys' processing. But feel free, Commissioner Villanueva.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points, and I will try and be brief. To Commissioner Velto's point, we're not eliminating that option. The option's still available to develop, for example, outside that McCarran Loop. They just have to come and get the variance for that. One of the other things that I've been thinking about is if we start within the McCarran Loop, then we can really kind of exploit all opportunity of infill. Even though it's more expensive, these are affordable housing that allow for some diversity, because my concern would be we're pushing all the affordable outside of the McCarran Loop and then resulting in, some form of segregation. I just don't unintentionally, because you said it yourself, it's more expensive to develop and a lot of it's going to end up getting pushed out. And so I don't want all the affordable housing getting sent to the outskirts. I would like to start seeing us develop from the inside out. That's kind of, what I would like to see. So yes, absolutely, I'm all about affordable housing, but let's do it in an appropriate way.
Commissioner Armstrong.
I like the approach that you laid out, where we start kind of at the upper bound and see how we go. And if we end up at baseline, I think everyone is in favor of baseline. So I would be in favor of that approach and ready for a motion.
Can I ask a clarifying question before making a motion? Is this 4 or 5 votes to make the recommendation?
This one, I believe, is 4 votes.
Thank you. With that, Chair, I'd be ready to make a motion.
Okay, please do.
In the matter of case number text 24-00001, based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to recommend the City Council approve the text amendment by ordinance with 4 amendments. First, amendment to section 18.04.1503, incentives for affordable housing, to add an entitlement for a height deviation by right, allowing a project to build 2 additional stories to a building if the project complies with the affordability requirements. Second, an amendment to allow by right duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in SF3, SF5, SF8, and SF11. Third, an amendment to remove minor and major deviation setback requirements on affordable housing developments. And fourth, to remove parking requirements for affordable housing projects.
And fifth, if we could also include revisions to the density bonus calculations, just because I did the math wrong, and thank you.
And fifth, including the revisions to density bonus calculations as recommended by staff. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion. I'll look for a second, and we will have discussion, so I need a second.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion. I'll actually kick that off if you don't mind. So Commissioner Velto's first approach felt good, felt right. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, very persuasive, aggressive. I like it. I'm a little concerned, and the only thing that is going to get me to a yes on this is we are kicking it up to the council. We are opening up to public discussion. I do trust our leaders and the representatives in each ward, to make their case, and I'll be in support of it moving forward. Any more discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner Becerra.
Great. I'll likely be in support of how it's being presented. I think my only ask, and maybe it's a question for Angela, is if this moves forward, would you be able to just present to council the various discussion and different options we explored, just so that they have context, because it might be things that they consider during the first and second reading and so forth, right? Because they might want to make different changes themselves.
Absolutely. We also include the Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Yeah, perfect.
And with that, emphasizing Commissioner Becerra and Commissioner Munoz's concerns for a potential carve-out that may affect Commissioner Munoz's Ward 4 concerns, as well as Commissioner Becerra's.
Yeah, we can highlight that in our staff report to council.
Great. With that, I'm on board.
Okay, motion and a second. More discussion. If not, I will go to a roll call vote. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, any discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. All right, Michelle, let's do a roll call, please.
Draculich,
Yes.
Armstrong,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Munoz,
No.
Romeyer,
Yes.
Velto,
Yes.
Villanueva.
No.
Okay, the vote is 5-2. Motion passes.
Okay. Congratulations, Angela. All right. Thank you all for the great conversation there. Yeah, projects, many. Great. Oh, I should get back to my agenda here. All right. That was the end of item 5. Thank you all. Let's move to item 6, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
None tonight.
Excellent news. Close item 6, open item 7, staff announcements.
Yeah, just a couple quick announcements. Once again, for the record, Mike Rayleigh. We will not be having a second meeting this month. Our second meeting in February is going to be canceled. That's largely just due to what we see normally in the holiday slowdown in terms of intakes. However, with that said, we will have a fairly full agenda on March 6th, just based on our January intakes. So just to kind of keep you in the loop on that. In terms of projects that you've reviewed, the Heiser specific plan district that you approved in January, that was upheld by the city council, with the only change, as you recall, we had a lot of discussion on the parks on that one. They will be required to pay the park tax that was put back into the SPD. So that goes actually back for a second reading at council next week. And with that, I don't have any further announcements.
Great, thank you. Closing item 7, item 8, commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. And we do not need to add in, it talks about affordable housing to the next. Anyway, any suggestions? Seeing none, close item 8. Item 9, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Michelle.
I did not receive any correspondence, no voicemails, no request to speak forms, and no one on Zoom.
Seeing no one in these chambers, I will close item number 9, public comment. We'll move to item number 10 for adjournment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, second.
All in
Sorry,
favor of
wait,
adjournment?
Aye.
stop.
Aye.
Wait, hold on. We do have somebody else that is on Zoom for public comment. So
There was
can we-
someone.
can
Okay,
we
I'm so
reopen
sorry.
public
We'll
comment?
reopen item 9, public comment.
Yeah, I guess. Is she on? Donna, are you there?
Yes, hi, for the record, my name is Donna Keats. That happens all the time at the end. People get to make their uncommon comments, just so you know. I just want to say that was one of the most odd things I've ever heard with your 95 different permutations of things that you just went through on the housing. And I'd like to point out that the one component, there's several components I think you're missing. One, public participation process. Angela and her crew went through a tremendous amount of time and effort to try to make sure that as many people, members of the public, that could be engaged were engaged. They presented CUP requirements for multiplexing in single families. I'd like to know where you guys live, because if you lived in the old part of town, you might have different feelings about some of what you're saying. Also, it comes to my mind that some of you are not considering the constituents that ostensibly you're supposed to represent. I heard a lot of, I want to see this, I want to see that. I didn't hear what I used to hear, like my constituents seem to feel that or anything like that. I'm wondering what voice you're speaking from. And apparently none of you tuned in to the housing meetings that council had and the presentation that Angela and her staff have done before at other meetings, and saw how this came about these particular items being pulled out of code cleanup and how they landed on this and the pushback they got from members of council just about some of these really simple things. And she's trying to say, hey, man, you know, we can make this fly right in front of council. We have till July to do it. And now you've created this incredibly complicated mess, which is unlikely to go through the way it is, based on if you had watched any of the council meetings or participated. So I'm a little disappointed that for something this weighty, the very first time you guys are logging on the matter is right now when they really need a vote to happen. They've smoothed it out. They've made it palatable. They had 135 people express their opinions, which don't include mine. And I've got a ton of them at every single meeting. and the NAB presentations that they did. So the public process is just being gone, right? Because everything you're proposing has nothing to do with what was at any of the public presentations or the NAB meetings or anything else. It's a total takeoff from that, 100% difference. So, you know, I don't know. I guess I got to make a lot of comments to council about public process that is now not happening on any of these housing things. You mixed up apples and oranges, you know, by doing this. I think you have great ideas. I don't object to your ideas, but this process is a problem. And I think you should give some consideration to that. And if you really want to lob in on housing things, maybe you should take some more of your, I know you don't get paid very much for your job and I appreciate your service, but a lot of stuff has happened that it seems as though you're almost all of you are totally unaware of about what happened, except for a couple of you who obviously know the background story, but some of you really, it's like, whoa, left field. This is the first time up front. So I'm sorry if that sounded weird, but it was very painful to listen to, and I've participated in this stuff a lot, and I'm really disappointed that you couldn't just give a clean go on this and let's start getting somewhere, because now we're gonna have to do all the discussions again.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Keats. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, have a great night. All right, any more Zoom, voicemail, anything over there? All right.
No.
Also still seeing no one in the chambers. We will close item number 9, public comment, move to item number 10.
Make a motion to close.
All right, we got a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all.
I don't think I've ever heard her.
She hasn't called you yet?
Well, no.
Give her your number.
Oh, shoot, you know what? I haven't checked my voicemail.
So commissioners, if you're having problems with logging in, excuse me, commissioners, if you're having problems logging in, stay. If you're not having problems logging into the system, then you can go.